The rope didn't kill me, it just turned off the lights. One moment, the damp, familiar scent of the village square, the taste of cheap dust, and the rhythmic, hollow thud of boots on wood. The next, a violent, snapping silence. My neck, once a sturdy support for a teacher's pride, now feels like a jagged puzzle piece forced into the wrong hole. But death isn't a wall. It's a hallway. I am being dragged. The hemp, the same coarse material that stole my breath, is now a leash pulling me across freezing, polished stone. There is a sound, the elegant, rhythmic click of heels against marble, like a metronome counting down to a nightmare I haven't quite woken up from. Then, weightlessness. I am scooped up, my body handled with a tenderness that feels far more terrifying than the cruelty of the hanging. I am laid upon something soft, scented with sandalwood and crushed flowers. I open my eyes. She is there, but she is also nowhere. A silhouette stitched together from ink and shadows, her center defined by a single, terrifyingly beautiful cyclopean eye of molten gold. She wears the face of my deepest desires, a stolen image of beauty that feels like an insult to my grief. She is dressed in purple, the color of bruised skin and twilight. She speaks, and the vibration of it hums against my marrow. I am not afraid. That is the most frightening part. Fear requires a heart that is still beating, and mine feels like a dried, hollowed fruit. I am in her room, or rather, I am inside her. The walls, the floor, the scent of flowers, they are all limbs of a vast, alien anatomy. She calls herself Irene. She tells me I am dead, but the word is just a sound to her, like wind through dead leaves. She crosses her legs, a gesture so human it hurts to look at. She talks of her sisters, of wars fought in the rafters of reality, and of gods who were not merely worshipped, but consumed. She doesn't just tell me, she shows me. The wall behind me dissolves into nothingness. She drags me to the ledge of a world that is not a world, but a charnel house. Above, the sky is a yellowed, necrotic mess, a horizon of bone and ruin. Below, the architecture of heaven has been flensed, spiraled into towers of decomposition. I see the remains of the divine, and it is a banquet of agony. I collapse, the reality of it splintering my mind like glass. She kneels, her fingers cool as river stones against my feverish skin. She tells me she loves humanity, that she wants to rebuild, that I am not a warlock but a healer. Her voice is the honey that coats the blade. She wants a key. She wants to open a gate that was bolted shut long before I was born. She offers me power, not the flickering, pathetic spark of folk magic I used to patch broken legs, but something raw and ruinous. She is the shadow, and she is asking me to be the light that lets her in. I look at her, at the golden eye that contains centuries of hunger, and I realize the noose never truly came off. I am still hanging. I'm just dancing to a different rhythm now. She leans close, her presence a crushing, beautiful gravity. I can feel the choice blooming in my chest, dark and suffocating. I look at the gate, and then I look at her. My dramatic exit back there. Yeah, I know. I laid it on thick, even for an eldritch entity. Poor Casper was basically vibrating out of his own skin. But since I am the only reason his lungs are currently cycling oxygen, I think a little theatrical flair is just part of the service agreement. I patted his head. That seems to be a thing with you people. And he immediately scrambled away, looking for all the world like a man who just realized his house was on fire and his floor was made of lava. Hunger is a funny thing. I'm a bottomless void of celestial yearning, so I don't get to eat. Not in the way that matters. But Casper? He's a biological machine that demands fuel. And after the day he's had, the whole public execution thing, he's running on empty. I asked him for his favorite food, playing the part of the gracious host, and the poor guy muttered something about a chicken parmesan sandwich. I scoffed, obviously. Did he really think I was so culturally bankrupt that I didn't know what a chicken parm was? I'm the adversary, not a caveman. I've eaten gods. I can certainly assemble a sandwich. I led him through the twisting, gothic hallways of my own biology, feeling the familiar rhythm of his gait as he found his footing. In a kitchen that looked like a fever dream of a pizzeria he visited as a kid, I had it waiting. Crispy cutlets, molten cheese, sauce that had the right kind of heat. He stared at it like it was an alien artifact. He looked at me, waiting to see if it would poison him, or if I would even eat. I took a bite. Nothing in the universe, not even the marrow of a deity, has ever felt as grounding as that first bite of a greasy, perfect sandwich. Humanity has a lot of flaws, sure, but the invention of the chicken parm? That's worth saving a world or two for. Then, we got to the messy part. The business side of the soul binding. I didn't sugarcoat it. He has to kill the men who hanged him. That's the entry fee for the new life I'm handing him. He looked at me, all hazel eyes and moral hesitation, claiming he didn't do that kind of thing. I just licked the marinara off my thumb and reminded him that he was technically already dead, so the standards of the living didn't really apply to his new resume. He didn't laugh. He just looked like the weight of the universe was settling onto his shoulders. I offered him a deal. I wouldn't force him, but if he wanted to survive, if he wanted to fix the broken, festering wound that heaven had become, he had to be my hands in his reality. I promised him that the souls of the men he killed wouldn't go to that hellscape he saw. I'd take them off the board. It was a lie of omission, maybe, but he needed a win, and he needed to believe his hands could stay clean enough to function. He finally agreed. He made me swear, which is cute. He thinks terms and conditions apply to me. He wanted them safe. He wanted them fixed. He wanted the assurance that he wasn't just becoming a monster. I sat him down to mark the contract. I branded my mark, a cyclopean eye, right over his heart. He screamed, of course. I had him bite down on my finger to keep him from shattering his teeth. The smell of searing flesh is distinctive. But the connection? That was pure, intoxicating nectar. The moment that brand took, I felt his heartbeat, his fear, his messy, fragile life flooding into my reach. He's mine now, my little warlock, my conduit. I was ready to offer him a tour, maybe manifest a spa day to calm his nerves, but then the air shifted. The psychic pressure dropped like a lead weight, and the horizon of my own consciousness began to tear. A city-sized roar echoed through my hallways, and I saw Casper's eyes cloud over as his brain realized it couldn't handle the proximity of what was coming. I kissed his forehead, shoved him out of my reality before his mind could turn into jelly, and sent him back to the land of the living. He's gone, and just in time. My sister has arrived, and she isn't nearly as fond of humanity as I am. My youngest sister, Bina, just tore a rift in my ceiling and came tumbling in. She greets me with a sound like a chorus of screaming elephants, which would turn any normal human's brain into cottage cheese. I gave her the look, the one that says, "Remember, we are trying to be subtle, let's not liquefy the locals." She immediately deflated into a sheepish, moth-like thing. She's cute, in a teeth and compound eyes sort of way. I call her Bean, which drives her nuts, but I've got a few thousand years of seniority, so I think I've earned the right to be annoying. I zapped the portal onto the wall between two torches so we could watch Casper. He was currently busy waking up from his own grave, and let me tell you, it was a tactical disaster. The poor guy popped his head out of the dirt right into the business end of a handgun. I tried not to intervene, he's got to learn to swim, but he's my warlock, and I'm not letting him get ventilated on day one. I did a little localized atmospheric corrosion, rusted the gun into a useless hunk of scrap, and watched the fun begin. Casper is surprisingly scrappy for a teacher. He's got that raw, desperate adrenaline that makes for excellent television. When things got tight, he sent a frantic, panicked thought my way asking for a weapon. I obliged. I let his forearm bones punch through his skin, sharpening into a nasty, two-pronged claw. Watching him realize what he could do was better than any show on your cable lineup. One by one, the boys who hanged him met their end. It was efficient, bloody, and surprisingly emotional. When he finally got to Aaron, the one who sang in the choir with him, my warlock hesitated. It was pathetic, honestly, but also human. He snapped Aaron's neck with the kind of grim resolve that tells me he's finally getting the point. I'm keeping the guys he kills in a cage I manifested in my hallway. It's my little version of a pet store, minus the hamsters. Bina is currently playing nurse, stitching up the ones who are bleeding too heavily on my floors. She's annoyed because she wanted to watch the fight, but I promised her a trip to the spooky library crevasse later, so she's behaving. Casper is currently sitting in a stolen sedan, wiping blood off his face with gin-soaked rags, trying to act like a man who hasn't just butchered his neighbors. He actually thanked me. He called me Irene and told me to keep them safe. It's cute. He thinks he's negotiating terms with the devil. He's looking at his life now and deciding logically that his next step is to walk up to the suzerain, the big boss of this whole theocracy, and ask him nicely to hand over the key to heaven. I almost choked on my own ego laughing. Diplomacy. My warlock thinks he can save the world with a well-placed request. I love him, I really do. He's a big, beautiful, traumatized golden retriever of a man. But he has no idea what he's walking into. Bina is curled up at my feet, curious about what he's thinking. I'm keeping her out of his head. He's already going through a lot, but she's right. It is a slow, painful process, reprogramming a brain that's been stuffed with holy nonsense for his entire life. He's pulling out onto the highway now, the stolen car engine rattling like a dying breath. He's got 18 bullets, a third of a tank of gas, and a heart branded with my mark. He's broken, he's tired, and he's heading straight into the teeth of an empire that thinks he's a warlock. I watch his taillights fade into the dark. It's going to be a long night for Casper. And for me? Well, I've got a front row seat to the end of a world. I wouldn't miss it for anything. The sedan is a wreck, the door flapping like a broken wing, and Casper is driving it like a man trying to outrun his own shadow. He looks terrible, caked in dirt, dried blood, and the literal ichor of a nightmare. But he is moving. He pulls over, not to hide, but to purge. He falls to his knees in the weeds, vomiting up the horror of the evening. And in that moment of weakness, I am right there with him, watching through the eyes of my sister, Bina. To Bina, this is just a fascinating, repulsive bit of biological theater. To me, he's a man finally accepting that his old world died when his neck snapped on that scaffold. He returns to me in the only way he can, through sleep. When he wakes in my lounge, he is clean, dressed in his father's old tweed suit, and looking at me with a mixture of terror and dawning, inevitable acceptance. I've even added some hydrangeas. Humans love flowers. It makes the abyss feel a little more like a living room. I introduce him to Bina. She's a monstrosity of teeth, fur, and too many limbs, but she tries to be polite. Casper, ever the gentleman, treats the eldritch horror like a difficult relative at a funeral. It is almost endearing. I take them both to the cavern, a library tunneled into the cliffs of heaven. It is a masterpiece of entropy. Books, billions of them, drift like autumn leaves in a canyon that defies physics. Frozen geysers of paper and ink bloom in the air, caught in the cracks of shattered gravity. Casper stares through the window I've opened for him, and for the first time, he doesn't see a holy kingdom. He sees a graveyard of ideas. He asks me if we are gods. I tell him he can call me whatever helps him sleep at night, as long as he remembers that my blessings are significantly more personal than the silence his old god provided. After I shoo Bina away to give us some privacy, I take Casper's arm. We walk through the dark corridors of my own being, and I decide to take a risk. I've been studying these little humans for a long time, but I want to know what it feels like to be one. I take a fragment of my consciousness, a piece of Irene, and I strip away the eldritch vastness. I make her small, limited, and just a little bit more human. It is a foolish, dangerous experiment, but the way he looks at me, the way he finally feels like a partner rather than a prisoner, is worth the gamble. We step through a door into an autumn evening, a field where I've stashed the souls of the men he killed. They are huddled in tents, arguing, terrified. I offer to let him speak to them, to settle the score, but Casper just watches them. He isn't ready. He is careful, methodical, and honest about his own fear. He thanks me. The gentleness in his voice is a narcotic I wasn't prepared for. I feel his faith, a soft, hearth-fire warmth that settles into the deepest, coldest parts of me. I am the adversary, the entity that ate a god. Yet here I am, playing host to a man who just wants to find the key to a gate that leads to a ruined heaven. We are going to save worlds, he and I. Or maybe we're just going to break them until they fit the shapes we want. Either way, we are moving. He climbs back into the stolen sedan, cuts into the night, and I follow him, tucked away in the dark, waiting to see what he'll do when he realizes that being a warlock to a goddess is the easiest part of his day. We sit in the quiet wreckage of a library, the air thick with the smell of old paper and the kind of existential dread that usually takes a few millennia to cultivate. My warlock is nursing a cup of tea, his hand steady despite the blood that has only recently stopped staining his skin. He is sharp, observant, and entirely too thoughtful for his own good. He is already planning, strategizing, and trying to act like a man who hasn't just butchered his neighbors to secure his own resurrection. It is almost cute how he thinks he can outmaneuver the authorities on his own. He has a plan, of course. He wants to intercept a temple inspector, force them to drive him to the seat of his religion, and then somehow finagle an audience with the suzerain. Diplomacy. He wants to use diplomacy to overthrow a divine regime. I love him, I really do, but he has the tactical instincts of a confused golden retriever. I suggest the more efficient route, murder, identity theft, and a dash of magical face shifting, but he resists. He wants to keep his hands as clean as a man covered in gore can. I let him have this for now. I show him the ropes, or rather, I show him how to bleed the world. I force him into a training loop, conjuring up faceless, screeching horrors for him to butcher. I need to know if he has the stomach for this, and frankly, I need to see him in action. He is learning, slowly. He discovers that his body is now a living weapon, capable of breathing corrosion that liquefies stone. It is a messy, foul-tasting business, but he is adapting. When he finally wakes up in his stolen, battered sedan, the reality of his new life hits him in the chest like a physical blow. He is a fugitive, a murderer, and the property of an entity that sees his moral crisis as a form of entertainment. He washes the grime of his former life off in a river, but there are stains that water can't reach. He looks at his reflection and sees a stranger, someone who can breathe acid and mend flesh with a thought. He waits at a rest stop, watching the road, fueled by jerky and the kind of nervous energy that ruins digestion. He is terrified that I am lying to him, that I am just another deity playing a game with his soul. He wonders if I watch him while he sleeps, while he bathes, while he exists. I do, of course. It is an exquisite sort of obsession. Then, the cruiser appears. It is a masterpiece of gold and pearl, the kind of vehicle that screams institutional power. The inspector is a woman, tall, sharp-edged, and radiating the kind of casual authority that only comes from being an instrument of a god. Casper doesn't hesitate. He slips into the chapel, gun in hand, and for a fleeting second he looks like he belongs there, not as a pilgrim, but as a predator. He corners her, forces her into the cruiser, and suddenly, he is in the driver's seat of his own fate. As the car pulls away, I lean back in my lounge, watching his white-knuckled grip on the revolver through the portal. He thinks he's in control. He thinks he's on a mission of justice. He has no idea that the road ahead is paved with things far worse than what he left behind. I wonder how long he'll last before he realizes that in my game, nobody gets to keep their conscience. Inspector Jordan Darius is smart, she is calm, and she is entirely too observant for someone currently staring down the barrel of a stolen gun. She knows she is in trouble, but she is already working the angles. She is trying to negotiate, guessing names, and offering a path of least resistance. It is a brilliant, terrifying performance, and I hate every second of it. I slip into the back of Casper's mind, hovering behind his thoughts like a shadow. Jordan is a liability. She is a trained agent of a crumbling, corrupt faith who has already shown she is capable of mercy, which means she is unpredictable. The only way to be sure she does not ruin us is to remove her from the equation. I whisper the suggestion, but Casper is stubborn. He is clinging to a shred of his old life, that desperate need to be the good man in a story that stopped being about goodness the moment he died. The tension in the sedan is thick enough to choke on. Jordan is trying to coax him into a conversation, acting like a friendly travel companion instead of a hostage. She is slow-rolling the drive, keeping us within reach of help, waiting for her chance to twist the knife. We check into a motel that looks like a cheap, neon-soaked fever dream of a basilica. Casper forces her to cuff herself to the plumbing in the bathroom. It is a humiliating, degrading compromise, and she takes it with a mocking, resigned grace that makes my skin crawl. When he finally falls asleep, he returns to me. Our nightly tea ritual has become a battleground. Casper thinks he is bargaining for the life of an inspector, but he is actually trying to redraw the boundaries of my ownership. He talks about guilt and the weight of unnecessary death. I try to explain the reality of his position. He belongs to me. This is not a request. It is the fundamental physics of his new existence. When I offer him the choice, to kill her or to be hollowed out and made into something that will, he looks at me with a terrifying mixture of fear and defiance. He tells me to do it. He challenges me to break him. I am furious. I am the adversary. I have unmade gods, and I am currently being outmaneuvered by a himbo warlock who thinks he can win a debate with an eldritch power. I want to tear him apart, but there is something about that stubborn, ridiculous defiance that holds my hand. I am obsessed with the way he thinks, the way he feels, and the way he tries to hold on to a humanity that I am actively stripping away. I let him keep her, for now. I warn him that if this blows up in his face, I will be the one who gets to say I told you so, and I will be carving it into his skin when I do. He smiles at me then, that picture-perfect, infuriatingly earnest smile, and I feel a pang of something that is definitely not divine. I try to explain that my affection for humanity is just a quirk, like a child admiring an anthill, but even I know that is a lie. I am trying to justify why I haven't turned him into a puppet yet. I conjure a nightmare version of the inspector, fanged, hungry, and fast, and drop it into the room. Casper doesn't complain. He just takes the pistol, narrows his eyes, and prepares to fight. I lean back on my chaise, watching him move, thinking about how he will eventually break. Because he will. They all do. And I will be the one there to pick up the pieces, whether he wants me to or not. The men of Rogarth are still alive, but they are not at home. They are trapped in the pocket of autumn I manifested, huddled near their tents in a field that smells of damp leaves and impending endings. They have the pool table I promised, and they have the time to debate their existence, but there is no joy in it. Casper promised them a tap house, but he left them with nothing but the existential dread of realizing their world has fundamentally broken. After he walks away from them, he tries to act like a man who isn't currently owned by a goddess. He tries to be polite, to keep his hands clean, but he is running out of options. I pull him out of the pocket and into the sanctuary of the mountainside vista I've built for him. It is time for him to relax. It is time for him to stop pretending that he isn't my warlock. I watch him slip into the hot tub. He is stiff, guarded, and entirely too concerned with propriety for a man whose soul is branded with my mark. I don't care about his human concepts of modesty, and I make sure he knows it. When I slip into the water beside him, the air in the tub changes. It becomes heavy, charged with the kind of intimacy that only happens when one person is a god and the other is a man trying desperately to remember how to be a person. He asks me what it is like to be me. He wants to know if there is anything behind the stage play of reality. I show him a glimpse of the truth, that everything he has ever known is just a set piece, a thin, painted flat in a universe that is far wider and more terrifying than he can comprehend. I nudge his knee with my toe, and for a second I think he might actually snap. But he doesn't. He looks at me with those haunted hazel eyes, and I realize I have made a terrible, wonderful mistake. I am falling for my own toy. The reality of his mission catches up to us, of course. The radio crackles. Inspector Jordan Darius is still playing the part of the friendly host, and the world outside the cruiser is still trying to kill us. We hit the checkpoint that changes everything. A Templar stops us, a young man who is just doing his job, just following orders. He asks the wrong questions. He finds the inconsistencies in our story. Casper doesn't look at me for permission, and he doesn't wait for a sign. He just acts. In a heartbeat, the amiable Templar is gone, his head snapped back by a bullet. Casper throws the inspector into a cuff, tears out of the cruiser, and transforms. He becomes a creature of chitin and nightmare, a killing machine that uses his own skin as armor. He moves with a lethal, fluid grace that makes me shiver. He tears through the remaining guards, his bone claws singing through Kevlar as if it were paper. When he returns to the cruiser, he is covered in the blood of men who were just following orders. He isn't the man who made a headstone for a frog anymore. He is something much, much darker. Jordan watches him from the driver's seat, her expression a mix of fury and frozen horror. She knows who he is now, and I have never been more proud. He doesn't say a word. He just reloads, puts the gun on the seat, and tells her to drive. The music is gone, the camaraderie is dead, and the road ahead is wide open. We leave the bodies in the dust, the latest additions to a trail of wreckage that stretches all the way back to his grave. My warlock is growing up, and the fun is only just beginning. Jordan Darius is walking dead, and she knows it. I can feel the frantic, buzzing cloud of her final intentions, a storm of desperate prayers and cold, tactical calculations. She is already rehearsing my death, a litany of guilt-ridden penance. She is a tool of an empire that demands blood for mercy, and she has decided that I, the warlock who showed her kindness, must be the final sacrifice to prove her loyalty. She wants a pee break. It is the oldest, most transparent excuse in the book. She is looking for a patch of wilderness, a moment of separation, and a chance to end me. I should be insulted by the lack of imagination, but honestly, I am just bored. The universe is a stage, and she is playing her part with a predictable, exhausting, religious fervor. We pull off the highway, winding into the skeletal remains of a planned community, a ghost town of hollowed-out dreams and moldering concrete. The silence here is heavy, thick with the rot of abandoned holy wars. I let Casper lead the way, but I am hovering behind his eyes, a shadow coiled in the dark. She turns her back to him, and he does the one thing I begged him not to. He plays the gentleman. He turns away. The sound of the stone striking his head is like a gunshot. Jordan moves with a predator's instinct. She is on him in a blur, a flurry of violence that shouldn't belong to a human inspector. She has him in an armbar, a clean, professional snap of bone, and for a second, I see the light go out of his eyes. The gun goes off, a useless, deafening sound in the quiet woods. My rage is a physical thing, a cold, boiling tide of acid, and I don't think, I just act. I rip his arm off. It is a messy, clinical detachment, like a crab discarding a limb to survive a predator. Casper doesn't even scream. He just pivots, his detached arm still clutching the revolver, and he dives. The gravity knife he once took from her finds its mark. Her eyes go wide, a flicker of profound, terminal confusion, the look of a woman who just realized her God isn't coming to save her. Then, silence. He stands there, panting, as his limb lashes back into place with a sickening, rubbery snap. He looks down at her cooling body, and the most terrifying part isn't that he killed her. It is that he feels nothing. He is waiting for the crushing weight of his 10th soul, the familiar agony of his own humanity. But there is only a hollow, echoing stillness. He is finally what I need him to be. He bundles her into the trunk like a discarded grocery bag, his fatigue finally catching up to him. He is spent, a man running on nothing but my borrowed strength. He retreats into a quiet garage, sinking into the darkness of exhaustion. And as he drifts off, I feel it. The warmth of his faith, the quiet, aching sincerity of his prayer to me. It is intoxicating. It is beautiful. And so, we wait. I spend the time crafting a pool table for the poor souls trapped in my pocket dimension. I force Casper to teach me the game. I want to understand the way his mind works, the way he tries to hold on to the rules of a world that no longer applies to him. I wear a dress that is far too short. I lean over the table in ways that make his breath hitch, and I watch the way his eyes struggle to look anywhere else. He is a man of honor, a man of rigid, crumbling principles, and I am the void that is slowly consuming him. He doesn't know why I want him, why I haven't just twisted him into a puppet of meat and bone yet. He doesn't understand that I am just as confused as he is. I am a god, and I am obsessed with the way a mortal man smells. He is terrified of me, and he is devoted to me. He is my warlock, and he is beginning to understand that there is no heaven waiting for him at the end of this road. There is only me. And when the time comes to finally take my throne, I am going to make sure he is right there beside me, singing my name. Jordan Darius is a woman who has seen the literal end of her reality and has decided to be a pain in the neck about it. She sits there, dabbing at her eyes, still trying to wrap her mind around the fact that her heaven is a slaughterhouse and her God is a snack. She is accusing me of cheating, of fabricating the truth, of being a liar. It is almost cute. She is dead. She is a pawn, and she is still trying to negotiate with a cosmic force she cannot hope to understand. I tell her she is finished. She just bares her teeth and tells me that the Father has numbers, and that if it wasn't her turn to kill me, it would be someone else's. She is a true believer, even when the evidence of her own extinction is staring her in the face. Then my sister, Bina, decides to intervene. She has always been the chaotic element, the one who likes to play with her food before she eats it. She offers to show Jordan the truth, to give her the kind of proof that breaks a human spirit. We bring her to Bina's domain. It is a masterpiece of grotesque architecture, a damp, moss-covered hellscape of dripping stone and cyclopean brick. It smells of mildew and things left too long in the dark. We take her to the centerpiece, a massive, undulating pile of wreckage that used to be the citizens of heaven. It is a sentient, shrieking mountain of meat, and yes, I made sure her father was somewhere in the middle of it. When she sees what has become of her faith, the iron in her spine finally snaps. She doesn't want comfort. She doesn't want the truth anymore. She just wants back in. She wants to be a warlock. She wants to be a weapon. Bina is ecstatic. She has been waiting for a pet of her own for an eternity. She brands Jordan, a quick, brutal, sizzling mark on her abdomen that leaves the inspector gasping for air. There is no sentimentality here, just the cold, hard currency of power. Jordan is no longer a tool of the Empire. She is an asset of the Void. And because the universe has a sick sense of humor, she is now going to be working alongside my Casper. The ride back to my domain is a masterclass in tension. Jordan is shell-shocked, nursing a beer like it is the only thing keeping her soul anchored to her body. She still has that infuriating, stubborn streak, telling Casper that just because she's a warlock now doesn't mean she is letting him drive her cruiser. I watch them standing there, the warlock and his new nightmare partner. Bina is bouncing around, making noises about playdates and warlock infants, which is enough to make me want to tear the reality out of the sky. I am not a dating service. I am an Eldritch power with an obsession for a man who is currently trying to learn how to play pool without accidentally killing the furniture. I leave them to it, pulling Casper back into our reality with a kiss to the forehead that leaves him reeling. My sister, of course, isn't subtle. She realizes exactly what I am doing, why I am hovering over a mortal like a love-struck teenager. She calls it gross. She calls it fun. I call it a mess. But as I look at Casper, dutifully racking the balls for another game, I realize I don't care. He is mine. The inspector is a complication. The universe is a stage, and I am the only one who knows how the play ends. And I think I am going to enjoy every second of it. Casper wakes up to the sound of Jordan Darius moving in the trunk, a grim reminder that our hostage is currently a walking corpse and a new servant of the Void. She emerges, pale and furious, sporting a messy, blooming stain of dried blood over her heart. We are on the road again, moving through a landscape of abandoned missions and broken promises, and the tension between them is thick enough to choke on. Jordan is still clinging to her duty, to the lie that she was a hero before I turned her into a monster. Casper, ever the optimist, is trying to build a bridge where there is only a chasm. He keeps trying to normalize their dynamic, acting like they are partners in a heist rather than two people who have already killed each other. He apologizes for murdering her, and she scoffs at him with the cold, hard resentment of a woman who has lost her life, her faith, and her sense of self. It is messy, it is awkward, and I am starting to find my own reactions to their bickering increasingly unpredictable. My human shell feels things I never programmed it to feel. They pass a billboard of Archbishop Till-I-Am, the grinning architect of their old, corrupt world. Jordan hates him with a fire that is almost refreshing. She is a true believer who has been betrayed, and she is just as ruthless as I could have hoped. When she wonders aloud why I gave her a wolf-bug monster instead of a sexy shadow form, I nearly lose my mind. I am the adversary, not a character in a bad romance novel. But the real trouble isn't the inspector. It is my sister, Gania. She makes her presence known with a psychic broadside that nearly liquefies my internal organs. We meet in an amphitheater I have draped in stolen finery. Gania is a titan of riveted steel and brass mail, a brutalist monument to war who thinks she can bully her way to the key. She crushes me into a grease stain. She mocks my desire for a pantheon, and she treats the warlocks like pawns in a game she has already decided she has won. I reconstitute, I reform, and I tell her exactly where she can shove her hubris. She leaves with a threat. She will kill our warlocks last. It is a promise I intend to hold her to. Casper and Jordan are practicing their new, grotesque abilities in a field of weeds. Casper can detach his limbs like a deranged boomerang, and Jordan is learning how to manifest an iron wolf's head that looks far more terrifying than anything I can manage. They are sitting in the grass, talking about the dozens of people they have killed in the name of a god who left them to rot. They are talking about the suzerain, the man who holds the key, and they are discussing their plan to walk into his palace and try to talk him into giving it up. Jordan thinks Casper is an idiot. Casper thinks he can be the change in a world built on bones. I watch them from the shadows of my own mind. My warlock is wearing new clothes. He is carrying a brand on his chest that links him to me for eternity, and he is sitting next to a dead woman who is fast becoming his best friend. They are a disaster waiting to happen. They are an affront to everything Gania stands for. And as I watch them start the engine and head toward the capital, I realize that I am not just holding the strings. I am watching the show, and I am finally beginning to understand why the theater is so addictive. The play is starting, the stakes are impossible, and I am the only one who knows that the curtain is going to fall in blood. Chamchek is a city of illusions, a gilded stage where the wealthy preen under the shadow of 1,000 stone falcons. But my warlock does not stay in the velvet-lined heart of the jewel. He drives into the chutes. It is a place of rotting wood, crumbling dreams, and people who look like they have forgotten how to smile. It is the ugly, festering wound that the rest of the city pretends does not exist. It is exactly where Jordan belongs. We stop at a greasy, flickering shop named Debbie Donut. It is a monument to stale sugar and broken spirits, presided over by a cardboard saint who beams with a corporate, plastic piety. Jordan is not here for the fritters. She is here for a ghost from her past, named Leonard. I watch through Casper's eyes as the drama unfolds. Jordan is not a negotiator. She is a woman who deals in leverage. She binds her old acquaintance with handcuffs, quotes scripture like a curse, and forces him to rewrite reality for us. Casper watches the forgery of his new life, his eyes dark with the dawning realization of what he has become. He is a ghost with a fake name, a dead man walking, and a weapon for a goddess he barely understands. The air in the chutes is thick with the smell of cheap tea and impending violence. We leave the shop with a stack of papers and a sense of urgency. The authorities have noticed their inspector is missing. The clock is ticking. Jordan decides we are going to drive fast, and by fast, she means sirens wailing and lights flashing. She tells me about her life in the chutes, the burning need to be better than the dirt she crawled out of, and the way it felt to win, to be the best, to hold a gun and command the room. She is a fascinating creature of spite and ambition. I find myself leaning in, watching her profile, noting the way her pulse quickens when she talks about power. Then, the world breaks. It happens in a spray of glass and screaming metal. A pickup truck slams into us, turning our flight into a spin of chaotic destruction. Casper wakes up in the middle of a war zone, the taste of blood in his mouth and the smell of ozone in the air. He is an amateur, a militia-trained boy, trying to play God with a body that can peel like an orange. His enemy is a red-armored nightmare, a warlock of one of my sisters, and he is fast. The fight is a desperate, grinding mess of iron claws, chattering gunfire, and desperate, human grit. Casper is losing. He is being choked out by a machine of muscle and hate. He panics. He acts with the kind of sloppy brilliance that makes me want to scream and cheer at the same time. He detaches his own limb, a sickening display of body horror that manages to put a bullet into the enemy's heart. We survive, but barely. The cruiser is a ruin. The city is alerted. Jordan is shaking with adrenaline and pure, unadulterated rage over her wrecked car. They flee into the dark, leaving the blood of our kin staining the asphalt. I do not let the enemy warlock escape entirely. I reach for his soul, but it is already slipping away, claimed by a sister who is playing the same game I am. I settle for the one who survived, the one who tried to kill my warlock. I drag him into the silent, suffocating dark of my own domain. I stretch my form, letting the human facade melt away to reveal the hungry, jagged thing I truly am. My eye opens wide, a cyclopean gaze that swallows the light. I lean down, my drool dripping like acid, and whisper into the ear of a man who is about to learn that death is only the beginning of his problems. I'm going to have so much fun pulling his secrets out of his head. Jordan is spiraling, and frankly, she has every reason to be. The cruiser is a smoldering wreck, the authorities are hunting them like rabid dogs, and she is officially a pariah in the world of men. She sits there counting her problems on her fingers, her jazz hands of failure hitting a 5-star rating of pure, unadulterated trouble. She is burned, she is hunted, and her life is a shattered mirror. But here's the thing about being a ghost. You stop caring about the rules. Casper sits across from her, a farm boy turned instrument of the void, and for the first time, there is a flicker of something raw and human between them. He calls her Geordie. She calls him Cass. It is a small thing, a simple shift in language, but in a world that is eating itself alive, it feels like a declaration of war. They are two broken-down lean-tos, survivors of a faith that abandoned them to rot, and they are starting to realize that the only thing they have left is each other. Casper suggests they sleep, but before he can, he pulls me into his world. I manifest in my autumn meadow, the air crisp and the forest stretching out like a long-forgotten memory. I am wearing a cable-knit sweater, holding a picnic basket, and reading the father's precepts just to watch Casper squirm. The books are full of ancient, dusty rules that Casper has been busy breaking, and I take a perverse, exquisite pleasure in pointing out every single one of them. He is my warlock, my anchor to this chaotic, sensory-rich reality, and I am not about to let him forget it. I tease him, I rattle his cage, and then I drop the hammer. This isn't just a game. My sisters are in a race to the bottom, and if we don't move, the entity known as Aid is going to consume everything. I don't tell him because I want to scare him. I tell him because he needs to know that the stakes aren't just high. They are existential. To anchor him, to make sure he knows exactly where he belongs, I pull a tendril of void stuff from my head and twist it into a ring of solid gold. I give myself a matching one. It is a desperate, possessive, human gesture, and even as I laugh it off as a joke, I know it isn't. I am locking him down. I am carving my name into his soul, and for a moment, he lets himself be held. He lets himself rest his head on my lap, and I see the fear in his eyes give way to a fleeting, fragile peace. But peace is a luxury we cannot afford. I need a private flight to Pasternos, and that means I need to make a deal with Saoirse, a sister I have spent my entire existence trying to avoid. As I stand in the meadow, watching Casper walk away toward the tap house, I realize I am doing something dangerous. I am having a human reaction to a human situation, and it is a complicating factor I never intended to invite. I tell myself to absorb the Irene form, to burn the sensory input out of my core, to return to the cold analytical void. But I don't. I keep the form. I keep the ring. And as I set off to meet Saoirse, I walk with the heavy, stubborn determination of someone who has finally decided that the prize is worth the cost. The final act has begun, and I am tired of playing by the rules of the dead. To step into the domain of my sister Saoirse is to walk through the fevered dream of a dying god. Imagine a crater the size of a city, but instead of steel and concrete, it is a churn of rubbery, moss-covered flesh, spines, and fungal growths that reach for the sky like jagged, gasping fingers. It is a masterpiece of decay, a place where life and rot are not merely neighbors but lovers, devouring and recreating each other in an eternal, sickening cycle. I had to reconfigure my own human form just to breathe in her air. My lungs had to be tuned to filter out the spores, and my skin had to be toughened against the caustic, ever-blooming poisons that drip from her every surface. She waits in her largest chamber, floating on a halo of iridescent dragonfly wings, a fairy queen of teratomas and death caps. She is terrifying, she is beautiful, and she is entirely, unapologetically insane. We are here for a favor. To reach Pasternos and seize the key that will decide the fate of heaven, we need an airship, and to get an airship, we need her servant, Perry, a pilot whose brain has been largely replaced by her intoxicating, bliss-inducing fungi. The negotiation is a dance over an open grave. Saoirse doesn't offer power like the rest of us. She offers a drug called Silo. It is the ultimate escape, a dreamless, thoughtless, euphoric void that leaves the user a hollowed-out husk of their former self. Her servants are not warriors. They are addicts, and their loyalty is bought with the promise of one more hit of heavenly oblivion. She is perfectly willing to help, provided I pay her price. She wants Diamante, my world, my people, my home, as her personal garden once the current age of humanity has inevitably destroyed itself. She is patient, she is hungry, and she is entirely convinced that she will outlive the chaos. I agree to the deal because I have no other choice. If I do not, I risk the wrath of our eldest sister, the one who does not bother with names or gardens, the one who only knows how to consume. We leave her kingdom of rot with a plan. We are going to break into a casino called the Platinum to rescue a fungus-brained pilot who doesn't even know he is a prisoner. It is a ridiculous, dangerous, and utterly desperate plan. As I walk away, my sister Bina is busy liquefying her manifestation, laughing at me for keeping my current form too long. She calls me a sap. She says I have a crush. I swat at her, but she isn't wrong. I am holding on to this human skin, this human shape, and these painfully human feelings because they're the only things keeping me grounded in the madness. I am courting the end of the world, and I am doing it with a broken heart and a forged ring on my finger. If this is how it ends, if this is the final bloody performance of the Pantheon, then I suppose I might as well make sure I enjoy the show. But first, there is a casino to rob and a pilot to save from the consequences of his own bad decisions. Casper returns to the tap house, his presence now a gravity well that draws the eyes of every dead man in the room. He is holding court, not as a man, but as a vessel for something vast and ancient. The air feels thin around him, charged with the ozone of a coming storm. He tells them the truth, or as much of it as they can handle without their minds snapping like dry twigs. He tells them he is a warlock, that the father they prayed to was a lie, and that the woman who walks in his shadow is the only thing standing between them and a void that is hungry for their souls. Some of them recoil. Some of them scream. Stephen, a man whose head was ventilated by Jordan's bullet, is the first to shatter. He looks at me, at the shifting, abyssal darkness of my manifestation, and flees into the night, unable to process the reality of his own death. I choose that moment to step into the light. I drape my arm through Casper's, a deliberate, possessive gesture that leaves no room for doubt. To the dead, I am a goddess. To Casper, I am the rain and the peaches and the end of his world. When we are outside, Casper asks for a jukebox, a pathetic human attempt to bring order to the chaos of his new life. I grant it, not because I am kind, but because I am curious to see what they do with their eternal stagnant time. I also show him the truth of my siblings. We discuss the deal with Saoirse, a bargain carved in rot and sugar. I watch his face as the horror of it sinks in. He is skeptical, fearful, and yet he remains mine. I decide it is time to teach him the art of the mask. I shift, my bones popping and my flesh flowing like liquid shadows until the face of the late Archbishop Till-I-Am stares back at him. I force him to try. He shuts his eyes, straining against the limits of his own identity, and for a terrifying, fleeting moment, his face becomes the mirror of a man he once feared. He is an old, white-haired stranger, a ghost wearing a ghost. I make him do it again. He becomes our target, a man named Degmer. It is a dress rehearsal for our infiltration of the Platinum Casino. Before I send him back to the waking world, the air between us becomes impossible to breathe. I do not want to let him go. I want to keep him in the cool, dark sanctuary of my mind, where the stress of his duty cannot touch him. I want to save him from the blood, the killing, and the slow, inevitable erosion of his soul. But I am the adversary, and he is my winning ticket. I cannot have a warlock who hides in the dark, I need one who walks through the fire. I kiss the top of his head, the scent of him anchoring me to the earth, and with a ripple of displaced air, he is gone. He wakes up in the stale, smoke-choked air of a motel room. Jordan is already working, her body a kinetic machine of discipline and rage. They are a disaster, a pair of broken things trying to assemble a weapon out of forged papers and stolen identities. They break into a car, a convertible, because Jordan refuses to die with anything less than style, and head for the Treasure District. The Platinum is a temple to greed, a place where prayers are gambled away and the Father's love is measured in ducats. Degmer, a man whose only sin is his mediocrity, is walking toward his lunch break when they grab him. The tension in the alley is a physical weight. Jordan is cold, efficient, a creature of the chutes who understands that mercy is a luxury they cannot afford. She demands the script, forcing the terrified man to parrot lines he does not understand, while his own face, worn by Casper, watches him with a growing, monstrous detachment. Casper struggles. He tries to be the man he was, the man who believed in a moral order. But he is a warlock now. He has been touched by the void. He watches as Jordan decides the man's fate, and as the pity behind his own eyes, his own face, fades into a hollow, jagged nothingness. I know he has finally crossed the threshold. The man tries to scream, but the hand that covers his mouth is his own. The blade finds its mark, and in the final, agonizing second of his life, he does not see the alley or the killers. He sees a golden sunset in a meadow that never ends, and he sees me, watching him with a gaze that is neither cruel nor kind, but simply, terrifyingly, inevitable. Bina is currently treating my domain like her own private jungle gym, singing songs that are as grating as they are poorly rhymed. She is a creature of simple, lupin joys, and for the moment, my lounge is her favorite place to shed the pretenses of humanity. I, however, am struggling with something far more complex. A single, errant tear has tracked down my cheek, a remnant of a human emotion I thought I had successfully scrubbed from my core. It is the weight of what Casper has done. He is a good man, or at least he was. Now, he is an instrument of necessity, carving a path through the living to secure a future for the dead. He believes he is disappearing, dissolving into the mask he wears, and the guilt of it is a quiet, rotting thing inside me. I have untethered my own manifestation, letting the human machinery of this body process these feelings, and it is a terrifying, beautiful, and utterly stupid mistake. I have given my sister permission to consume me if I ever lose my way, and looking at the way she watches me with those hungry, intelligent eyes, I know she would do it with a smile. Meanwhile, in the harsh, sterile light of the real world, the mission continues. Jordan is a shard of glass in human shape, sharp, jagged, and entirely lethal. She understands the stakes in a way Casper is only beginning to grasp. She doesn't just kill, she calculates. She views life as a series of vectors, and if a man like Degmer stands in the way of our survival, he is simply a variable to be removed. Casper, wearing the dead man's skin, moves through the Platinum like a ghost in a machine. He is surrounded by the bright, vacuous joy of the casino, a temple where people trade their souls for the chance to feel like winners. He is a stranger here, a man of simple virtues playing the role of a cog in a greedy machine. He navigates the hallways, melts a lock with a breath of acid, and steps back into the uniform of the man he helped kill. The tension is a physical force. A co-worker approaches him, her touch lingering on his arm, and for a second, he is nearly exposed. He is a man made of cold iron and borrowed time, fighting the urge to shatter under the weight of his own deception. Jordan initiates the diversion, a brawl that is as much art as it is chaos. She throws herself into the fray with a violent, detached grace, knowing exactly how to draw the heat while Casper makes his move. I am watching through them both, a goddess split between two worlds, observing the blood and the desperation as it unfolds. Casper reaches the elevator, his finger hovering over the unlabeled button that leads to the bowels of the casino. He is praying, not to the Father, but to me. He is asking me not to force his hand, not to turn him into the monster he fears he is becoming. I want to tell him that he is already there, that the monster is the only thing that can survive what we are about to do. But I hold my tongue, my own heart heavy with a sorrow that has no name. The elevator begins its descent, taking him deeper into the dark, and I realize with a jolt of cold clarity that there is no turning back. We are descending into the guts of the world, and by the time he surfaces, he may not remember who he was when he started. The elevator pings, a sound like a surgical instrument hitting a steel tray, and the doors slide open to reveal the suffocating silence of the deep. The elevator doors slide open with a mechanical groan, revealing not a high-security bunker, but a dreary, soul-sucking office corridor. Casper is a man on a razor's edge, his hand white-knuckled around a stolen gravity knife. He moves with a predatory fluidity, his every instinct screaming for the violence he is about to unleash. He isn't just killing for a mission anymore. He is killing to protect the fragile, impossible faith he has placed in me. He finds the room, kicks the door with a strength that defies human anatomy, and the violence is instantaneous. It is raw, messy, and efficient. The guard who opened the door is a memory in seconds, and Casper is left standing in the crimson spray, a silent tally of his sins ticking upward in his mind. He is now 12 bodies deep, a number that stains his hands and weighs on his soul. But he does not break. He is becoming something else, something sharper and colder, and I watch from the comfort of my own realm, a mixture of pride and a terrifying, unfamiliar guilt roiling in my gut. He finds our prize, Perry. The pilot is a wreck, a hollowed-out addict whose brain is more fungus than gray matter. When Casper wakes him, there is no spark of defiance, only a dull, vacant compliance. He is a tool, and we have come to sharpen him for our final play. The escape is a blur of adrenaline and dark humor. Casper drags the pathetic, shoeless pilot through the belly of the Platinum, using his gun to bully an attendant into opening the freight doors. The world outside is indifferent, a landscape of struggling, broken people who are all too busy squandering their lives to notice a man with blood on his hands and a ghost of a face that doesn't belong to him. Jordan is waiting for them in the convertible. She is a woman who has looked into the abyss and decided to treat it like a casual acquaintance. She sees the blood, she sees the exhaustion in Casper, and she does not offer comfort. She offers the only thing that matters, the mission. As they drive, the pilot's monologue is a bleak, nihilistic rot. He calls our existence a mistake, a side effect of evolution designed to keep the game of suffering going. He believes he is almost free, almost ready to be fully consumed by the void. Casper's contempt for him is palpable, a flash of moral outrage that reminds me why I chose him. He still believes that life, no matter how miserable, has value. He is the anchor to my own humanity, and as I watch him navigate the wreckage of his conscience, I realize I am terrified to lose him. They reach the pilot's apartment, a tomb of lost dreams and unpaid bills. It is the perfect monument to the life he is so desperate to abandon. They secure his uniform, his papers, his identity, the brittle tools required to steal an airship from under the nose of a god. When Casper returns to the car, there is a hollow look in his eyes, a flicker of doubt that I cannot allow to take root. He is not a killer by nature. He is a protector by choice, and the burden of his duty is slowly grinding his spirit into the pavement. I want to pull him into my realm, to shelter him, to convince him that his sacrifice has a meaning that transcends the carnage. But I am the adversary, and we are running out of time. They pull onto the road, the convertible a black streak against the dying light of the afternoon. They are moving, still moving, despite the pieces falling off their lives. I reach out through the connection, my thoughts grazing his mind, a silent, desperate promise that I am with him. The storm is coming, and they are driving straight into the eye of it. The prayer is a needle in my brain. It is the raw, agonizing heat of a man named Florin, pleading for his mother's soul, begging for a trade of his own life for hers. It is a pathetic, human symphony of guilt and desperation. And for a heartbeat, I am forced to listen. If Casper knew I was tempted to ignore it, he would look at me with those honest, wounded eyes and see the monster I have spent millennia trying to mask. I choose to answer, but I do it with a detached, cold efficiency that leaves me feeling hollow. I leave the lagoon, the water sliding off my skin like liquid silk, and find Saoirse and Bina huddled over a viewport. They are peering into the minds of my warlocks, and the sight is enough to set my teeth on edge. Jordan and Casper are stuffed into a wooden crate in the cargo hold of an airship, their bodies tangled in the dark, their voices hushed to keep the world from ending. They are bonded by the sheer, exhausting absurdity of their situation. Jordan is a woman who has forgotten how to be anything but a weapon, and Casper is a man who still mourns his own lost dreams. They speak of duty as if it were a religion, trading barbs about their own failures while the airship hums with the promise of violence. Then, the ship stops. The cargo hold lights flicker, and the air grows heavy with the scent of an ambush. They pry the crate lid open and find themselves inside a floating forum of marble and gold, a testament to the vanity of the man they have kidnapped. And then, the true nightmare begins. Archbishop Till-I-Am is on board. The discovery of the transponder is the death knell. The interceptor is closing in, a black shrike of an aircraft that brings with it 24 killers trained in the arts of surgical butchery. Jordan and Casper are outmanned, outgunned, and running out of time. They stack the furniture, they grit their teeth, and they wait for the breach. The violence is a blur of fire and screaming metal. They fight with a desperate, savage grace, but they are flesh and bone, and the interceptor's crew is a machine. When Casper takes a bullet to the thigh, and then another to the arm, I feel the fracture in my own bones. He is staggering, his system hitting its limit, his humanity clawing at the restraints of the warlock's power. They are trapped in the cockpit, the barricade destroyed, the end mere seconds away. And then, Saoirse decides it is time to play. She uses her servant, Perry, as a doorway. It is a brutal, beautiful, and sickening act of divine intervention. Perry blooms open like a rotten flower, and from the gore and the sinew, my sister emerges in a whirl of shimmering dragonfly wings. She moves with the terrifying speed of a landslide. Where she touches, the soldiers do not just die. They transform. They become cocoons. They erupt into moths. They crack open like shells to reveal herons and leafy, emerald carpets of lichen. It is a massacre of biological exuberance, a garden growing out of the ruins of the men who came to kill us. She clears the airship in 15 seconds. When she is finished, she gathers the mangled remains of her pilot, her expression one of beatific, unsettling affection. She looks at my warlocks, her gaze soft and utterly devoid of mercy, and vanishes. She is back in the tomb with us, her body crumbling to ash, looking entirely bored. I stare at her, my hand locked in Bina's, my heart hammering a rhythm that doesn't belong to me. My warlocks are alive, but they have seen the face of the garden. They have seen the price of our protection, and they will never be the same again. Neither will I. The aftermath of a slaughter is a strange, quiet thing. Casper moves through the wreckage of the airship like a ghost in his own body, his mind a frayed wire humming with the echo of Saoirse's violent, floral miracle. Beside him, Jordan is a study in jagged edges and clipped efficiency. They are survivors of a war they barely understand, picking through the remains of their enemies to scavenge whatever might keep them alive for another hour. The ship they have claimed is a vessel of cold, sterile luxury, a sharp contrast to the meat grinder of their previous lives. Casper, exhausted to the point of collapse, finally gives in. He retreats to a cot, his body surrendering to the heavy, dreamless dark the moment his head hits the pillow. But he does not stay there. He slips through the thin veil of sleep and walks directly into the forest of my making. I am waiting for him, not as a goddess, but as a woman behind a grill, the scent of caramelizing pork masking the ozone tang of my true nature. I want this to be simple, but with us, nothing is ever simple. The conversation that follows is a collision of realities. He is angry, and he has every right to be. He is the latest in a long line of souls I have bartered with, and the weight of his kill count, the tally of lives he has ended for my sake, is threatening to crush him. He accuses me of being a puppeteer, of using him as a sacrifice, and for a moment, The sky itself seems to hold its breath. I try to explain, but my words feel like clumsy, blunt instruments. How can I explain that I prize him? That he is a vibrant explosion of humanity in a landscape of cold, ancient stone? To me, he is a masterpiece of fragile, desperate life, and I am a starving thing that has finally found something it cannot bear to consume. The tension between us is a physical, suffocating force. It shifts the landscape around us, tearing the forest away to reveal a pyramid of cyclopean stone that rises toward the heavens. I lash out, forcing him to look at me, to see the hunger behind my golden eyes. I am a goddess who has spent eons above the fray, and for the first time, I am terrified of my own desperation. He is afraid of me, and he should be. I am not a person, and the mask of humanity I wear is slipping. But beneath the fear, there is something else, a bonfire of need that mirrors my own. When we finally touch, the world doesn't just fade, it burns. It is a collision of celestial hunger and mortal warmth. I don't know what I'm doing, and for an entity of my age, that ignorance is the most terrifying thing of all. I am lost in the friction of his skin, in the heat of a kiss that makes the tectonic plates of my soul tremble. I am drowning in the realization that I don't just want his worship. I want his life, his heart, and the devastating, beautiful mess of his devotion. And then I panic. The sheer, raw humanity of it, the vulnerability, the loss of control is too much. I shove him out of the dream, breaking the connection as if it were a glass rod. I am left alone in the clearing, screaming in a frustration that has no name, the pyramid crumbling back into dust around me. I am a goddess, and I have just realized that I am hopelessly, dangerously in love. I have tasted his life, and now, the thought of returning to the cold, remote worship of the past feels like a death sentence. The next time he comes for me, there will be no more masks. There will be no more distance. I have spent millennia watching humanity from the outside, but with Casper, I have decided to burn it all down to get closer. I will have him. I will have all of him. And heaven help the world if it tries to stand in the way. The adrenaline of the kiss is still vibrating in Casper's chest like a struck bell. He sits on the cold cot, his fingers tracing the shape of his own mouth, caught in the terrifying realization that he has just lunged across the divide between mortal and deity with nothing but a frantic, unthinking impulse. He expects my wrath. He expects to be unmade. Instead, he is left in the silence of the interceptor, his skin still prickling with the ghost of my touch. I am furious, not because he kissed me, but because he didn't ask. He moved with the reckless, ugly confidence of a beast, and yet, as I watch him through the connection, I am forced to admit that I am not angry at all. I am frustrated, a buzzing, dissonant ache, because the connection between us is so frustratingly thin, a one-way street of whispers and shadows when I want him here, fully formed, beneath my hands. The morning light on the interceptor is a sterile, unforgiving slate. I observe him through a new, simple manifestation, a hollow shell I've crafted to observe without the messy interference of heartbeats and hormones. I watch him go about his duties, nursing his confusion and his hunger, and I find myself feeling something I haven't in eons, a secret, dangerous curiosity. I am becoming contaminated by this warlock, and I find I don't care to be cured. He finds a new player on the board, Adair, a warlock who has been hiding in plain sight behind the guise of the Archbishop's companion. She is slippery, sharp-tongued, and possesses an ambition that acts like a beacon. She offers a truce, a collaboration. She knows the layout, the secrets, and the path to the suzerain. She is a tool, and Casper, with a grim competence that makes me proud, handles her with the caution of a man holding a live wire. Meanwhile, I am drifting through Bina's domain, sharing drinks and secrets with my sister. The world here is soft and orange, a contrast to the metal and fuel of Casper's reality. When I finally pass a message through Jordan, a simple confirmation that I am not angry, that I want to continue where we left off, I feel a jolt of genuine vulnerability. The message hits Casper like a physical blow. He flushes, he stutters, and he tries to hide his face in his hands, unaware that Jordan is watching him with a grin that is half amusement and half warning. He is so hopelessly, endearingly flustered. I am a goddess of unfathomable power, yet here I am, waiting for a human to finish his chores so we can return to the space between heartbeats where we can finally touch again. I have tried to be distant, to be the remote object of worship he thinks he needs, but the mask is shattered. I am in love with Casper Cartwright, and I have no intention of hiding it anymore. The plan is simple, but the stakes are catastrophic. We are moving toward a collision with the divine, and I have decided that Casper will not just be my warlock. He will be my partner in the ruin of the old world, and when we reach the end, I will ensure that he is mine, body, soul, and everything in between. The hunt is on, and for the first time, I am not the only one chasing something I cannot afford to lose. The airship feels tighter today, mostly because I am sharing it with a professional liar. Adair sits across from me, slouching in a way that is aggressively casual, her boots taking up half the floor space. She is playing the part of a soldier perfectly, which is ironic, considering she spends the rest of her time being a weeping damsel for the Archbishop. It is a weird thing, sitting here with a woman who can rewrite her own bone structure just to make a conversation more comfortable. She asks how long I have been playing this warlock game, and when I tell her barely a week, she looks genuinely surprised. I do not tell her that most of my training involved not getting blown up, rather than throwing magical energy around. We make a pact of sorts. She will keep playing the frightened mistress to keep our hostage Archbishop, till I am on a leash, and I will keep the gun pointed at her, just in case she decides to stop acting. It is a tense, delicate dance. She admits she gets tired of the performance. Women, she notes, are complex creatures. I just stare at her, wondering if she realizes she is currently taking notes on how to be a person while I am just trying to remember how to breathe. She asks if I am worried about what my goddess, Irene, will do if things go south. I tell her it will work out. I genuinely believe it. It is a stupid, dangerous level of faith, but when you are dancing with a celestial entity, you stop worrying about the steps. While I am stuck in the metal belly of this ship, the divine council is in session somewhere far above the clouds. We gather in the bleached, cavernous skull of an ancient war beast, a place where reality bends into sharp, crystalline geometries. My sisters and I, we are a fractured mirror of a pantheon, picking at the scabs of our history. Salome, our second eldest, greets us with the cold grace of polished chrome. Her home is a nightmare of light and shadow, lit by the pale fire of a cylindrical pit that makes the air feel like ice. She is hesitant, wary, but my sisters are persuasive. We're talking about Gania. The name alone is a bruise on the memory. Salome wants her down, wants an apology for past slights, but she has a plan. A dangerous, jagged little plan. She wants to use our warlocks, these tiny, fragile sparks of humanity, to bait a trap for the Iron Butcher. It is insane. It is suicidal. And, God help me, it is exactly the kind of move I need to make. I have realized something, staring into the dark. I do not just want to consume their faith, like the Father did. I want to guide them. I want to harvest their belief, yes, but to build, not just to burn. I look at my sisters, Salome, shimmering and proud, Bina with her chaotic heart, Saoirse with her endless hunger. And I think that maybe, just maybe, we could be the gods they actually need. If I can just get them all to stop trying to kill each other for 5 minutes, we could be magnificent. Back on the ship, the reality is much smaller and much damper. Jordan is suffering from altitude sickness, a pounding ache behind her eyes that no amount of grit can ignore. I reach out, pressing my hands to her temples, and feel the jagged, electric spike of her pain. I do not use grand magic. I use the quiet, messy stuff, the kind that feels like pulling a splinter out of a soul. I drag the ache into myself, let it burn for a second, and then shove it into the void. She looks at me like I have just performed a miracle. I have just performed first aid. The yacht we were scavenging is finally dipping below the horizon, sinking into the dark ocean below. But I could not leave it empty. I return with a fawn, a small, trembling thing that has no business being on an airship, let alone in a war. It is a ridiculous, soft, living creature in a world of cold metal. I tie it to a gun locker, right next to the Archbishop. The look on his face is priceless. The ship is quiet now, save for the rhythmic tapping of hooves and the low hum of the engines. I should be planning. I should be checking the hydro gauges. Instead, I lay down, the metal ceiling staring back at me like the ribs of a cage. My pulse is a drum, beating a rhythm I am starting to recognize. I close my eyes. I try to breathe, to slow the clockwork in my brain. I am tired of the war, tired of the running, and tired of being alone in the dark. I am waiting for her. I am waiting for the dream. And somewhere, in the spaces between heartbeats, I know she is waiting for me. The sun dips below the horizon, painting the world in shades of bruised violet and arterial red. It is a violent, beautiful light that spills into the chamber where Casper wakes. I am watching from the shadows, curled on a love seat that feels less like furniture and more like an extension of my own will, wrapped in layers of fabric that are both modest and an absolute lie. I speak his name, and the sound is soft, a tectonic shift in the quiet room. Casper is restless, his eyes tracing the lines of a form I built specifically for him, a vessel designed to house the messy, beautiful contradictions of a human heart. We sit across from each other, the space between us charged, crackling with the static of unspoken history. There is tea. It cools, forgotten, while we navigate the wreckage of our last encounter. I am a creature of logic, of grand designs, but Casper, he disrupts the math. He is a gravity bomb in a room built of fragile glass. I ask him if he remembers his own desires, the ones he was taught to bury under layers of dogma and fear. I watch him struggle, his thumb tracing the rim of his cup, his breathing shallow. When he finally speaks, the words are barely a whisper, yet they hit with the force of a falling mountain. He wants me. The admission hangs there, stripping away the roles of goddess and warlock, leaving only two people terrified of what they are about to become. I lean forward, the movement liquid, deliberate. I tell him that I have been waiting, that I am tired of the testing, the distance, the grand theater of divinity. I offer him a choice, a final exam with no syllabus. He takes it, his eyes meeting mine with a clarity that frightens me. There is no more room for metaphors, no more hiding in the abstract. When we finally bridge the distance, it is not merely a physical act. It is a collision of two vastly different realities. To the world outside, perhaps nothing happened, but inside that room, the geometry of existence folded. The bed softened, the walls breathed, and time itself seemed to stutter. I am an ancient thing, a sister of the void, but in the friction of his touch, I find I am something entirely new. I am learning the language of being human, one heartbeat, one touch, one sharp, electric intake of breath at a time. I watch his face as the realization hits him. It is a terrifying, magnificent thing to witness. The precise microsecond where a mortal decides that the danger, the fear, the sheer impossible weight of what I am is worth the cost. He isn't just touching skin, he is tracing the boundaries of his own soul, and he is choosing to let me in. I reach for him, my claws retracting, replaced by the softness of a woman who has finally found her anchor. It is a surrender, total and absolute. I have spent millennia watching empires rise and fall, viewing humanity from the cold vantage point of the stars. But here, tangled in silk and sweat, beneath the gaze of a man who looks at me not as a monster, but as a home, I am undone. The room melts. The boundaries of the self dissolve. We are no longer two beings, but a single, pulsing frequency, a storm of instinct and adoration. I feel the exact moment he gives himself away, his thoughts flooding mine, a frantic, ecstatic prayer of belonging that has no name in any human tongue. When the exhaustion finally takes us, leaving us adrift in the unending dark, the silence is different. It is no longer empty. It is heavy with a new kind of gravity. I press my face against the warmth of his neck, listening to the steady, reassuring drum of his heart. It is the only rhythm that matters now. My warlock is kind, he is strong, and against all reason, against all history, he is mine. I whisper a question, my voice rasping, breathless, not even sure if I am capable of forming the thought. Can you walk? I ask. He doesn't answer, just lets out a tired, contented sigh against my skin. I sink into the darkness, holding on, finally, for the first time in an eternity, completely still. The silence that follows a storm is never truly empty. It is a heavy, humming resonance that settles into the marrow of your bones. After the chaos, after the folding of dimensions and the surrender of the self, Casper and I drift. My warlock is spent, his energy poured into the earth of me, his breath a ragged, rhythmic lullaby against my collarbone. Humanity has really struck gold with this whole lovemaking thing. It is a messy, inefficient, and utterly brilliant invention. I have walked the infinite corridors of existence, seen stars be born and fade into cold dust, but your world is the only one where a collision of bodies can feel like the architecture of a new religion. He is my consort now, not because I commanded it, and not because he was coerced, but because he chose to be the anchor in my tide. He keeps me centered, tethered to the beautiful, fragile reality of things like wood, sweat, and community. He dreams of barn raisings and neighbors, of a world that didn't break him, and I promise him, with the weight of an eternity, that I will rebuild it all. I will give him back every piece he lost, and I will be the architect of a heaven that smells of fresh pine and honest work. When we return to the waking world, the shift is jarring. The interceptor is a cramped, metal cage, and Jordan is waiting with her rifle and her sharp-edged questions. It is a strange contrast, the vast, shifting void of my domain, where time is a suggestion, and the ticking clock of a war that is rushing toward an inevitable, bloody collision. We move the Archbishop till I am, to the bunks. Adair, our new and slippery teammate, performs her role as the weeping, captive mistress with such chilling precision that even I am almost impressed. Casper handles it all with a grim, quiet competence. He is no longer just a soldier or a hedge mage. He is someone who has been marked by something greater than his own history. There is a moment, while he sits in the pilot's chair, staring out at the approaching silhouette of the land, that I feel him thinking of me. It is not the distant, fearful call of a subject to a deity, but the warm, intrusive thought of a lover. It is a honeyed secret pressure against the back of my mind. He wonders if I am watching, if I am blushing, if I am still holding the imprint of him against my skin. He is right. I am. And if my sister Bina were here to see me, she would never let me hear the end of it. Ahead lies Pasternos, the relic city. It is a sprawling, gilded monument to a history that is rotting from the inside out. Somewhere in that maze of stone and shadow, the Iron Butcher waits. He is a predator of unparalleled lethality, a man who kills so cleanly his victims don't even know they are dying. Jordan and Casper have to hunt him, and the odds are a sick joke. But they have me. They have the void, and they have the promise that no matter how dark the path becomes, they will not be alone. Casper turns the interceptor toward the shore, the night air whistling against the hull. He is tired, bruised, and carrying the weight of a god's affection, yet he is smiling. He is ready for the hunt, and he is ready for the night to fall, so he can return to the space between heartbeats where I am waiting. He thinks he knows what forever means. He thinks he knows what it is to be owned, to be tethered, to be part of something that will outlast the stars. He doesn't, not yet, but he will. I will teach him the depth of that darkness, and he will warm me until the very end. The game is rigged, the deck is stacked, and the final move is already in motion. We are coming for the butcher, and when we find him, we will see exactly what happens when the iron meets the void. The arena floor is a graveyard of shifting geometry. One moment it is a landscape of bone, the next a chaotic spill of ink and screaming light. My sisters and I, we are tearing each other apart for the sake of practice. It is less of a combat exercise and more of a fever dream made flesh. We are rehearsing for the slaughter, sculpting war forms that are less about survival and more about making a point. Bina loses a head, Salome dissolves into quicksilver, and I am a tangle of limbs and teeth that would make a nightmare blush. It is funny, in a bleak, cosmic sort of way. We are the architects of the universe, and we are acting like children fighting over a broken toy. But there is a point to the violence. We are getting ready. The shadow of Gania is looming, and she does not play nice. Between the bouts of divine sparring, life in the void takes on an absurd, almost quaint quality. Casper is out there, somewhere in the periphery of my consciousness, playing at being a builder. He is obsessing over joists and boarding rams, as if he were constructing a summer home instead of a bunker in the afterlife. It is charming, honestly. He is surrounded by the ghosts of his enemies, building houses with the people he killed, and arguing about airships with the mechanical precision of a guy who just wants to live a quiet life. He has no idea that the very ground he stands on is subject to my whims, and that I have been punishing his enemies with targeted, localized storms just to hear them complain. It is petty. It is vindictive. It is, perhaps, the most human thing I have ever done. The strategy sessions with my sisters are something else entirely. We meet in Bina's domain, a place that smells of decay and ancient crumbling history. The table is mossy stone, the atmosphere is heavy with the scent of unstated threats, and the topic is the Iron Butcher. He is a monster, a man carved out of Gania's ambition, and he is coming for us. My sisters talk about him, and about Casper, with a clinical detachment that makes my skin crawl. They look at my warlock, the man who has tethered my chaos to the earth, and they see a pet, a novelty, a clever dog that learned to do tricks. I bristle at it. It is not just the condescension, it is the realization that they think we are playing a game. I take Casper's hand, and I feel his warmth, a tangible, electric contrast to the cold, eternal indifference of my kin. I am falling in love, and in doing so, I am dismantling the only logic I have ever known. I tell them, clearly and without apology, that the old ways are dead. We cannot just pick up human souls like expendable ammunition. We have to elevate them. We have to give them something to believe in that is not just a command to kill. The departure is the hardest part. Leaving the sanctuary of my realm is like stepping out of a heated room into the bitter, biting cold of a dead winter. I watch Casper, my brave, stubborn, beautiful man, steel himself for the mission ahead. He is bracing for a war he shouldn't have to fight, and I am sending him back into the meat grinder. It breaks my heart a little bit. It shatters the carefully constructed illusion of my own invulnerability. I kiss him, and I want to stay there, in that pocket of time where we are just two people, and not a goddess and her weapon. I want to freeze the world and keep him safe, but I cannot. I let him go. He wakes up in the middle of a forest, the air thick with the damp, earthy scent of reality. He is in the van, the world is quiet, and for a moment he is just a guy trying to get his bearings. Then he hears it, a tap, a rhythmic, insistent clicking against the metal frame of the vehicle. He opens the window, expecting a branch, or perhaps a curious animal. He sees the little deer he had mercy on, the one he thought he had saved. It is standing there, small and fragile in the morning light. And then, the deer opens its mouth. The forest goes silent, and the small creature looks at him with eyes that are far too old and far too knowing to belong to any animal. The deer speaks, and every instinct Casper has tells him that he is no longer alone in the dark. The van idles in the forest, a metal cocoon sheltering a bizarre, escalating absurdity. My warlock, Casper, has inherited a companion, a fawn that speaks with the guileless, terrifying logic of the newborn. It is a creature of the wild, yet it holds the potential of a god-touched weapon, bending reality with the same ease a human might blink. Jordan, ever the pragmatic inspector, is ready to snap, while Adair watches from the shadows, her eyes reflecting the complex, jagged geometry of a war that is beginning to look less like a battlefield and more like a fever dream. I watch through the ethereal tether that binds Casper to me. My own eyes are distant, caught in the frantic humor of it all. My sister Saoirse, that lovely, rotting architect of decay, has manifested in my domain, shaking with laughter as she explains the deer. It was a whim, she says, a little game to play with the lives of mortals. She doesn't care about the Iron Butcher or the delicate, fraying threads of our plan. She just finds the chaos delightful. My sisters are ancient, and in their ancientness, they have lost the capacity to understand that some things are too fragile to be toys. But Casper is proving to be something else entirely. He looks at Pete Moss, This ridiculous, talking, shifting deer, not as a tool, but as a person. He is tethering his own morality to a creature that shouldn't exist. And in doing so, he is creating a new kind of anchor. He takes responsibility. He treats the bizarre as ordinary. And he does it with a quiet, steady kindness that makes my chest ache with a feeling I still do not have a name for. Meanwhile, Casper and Adair are walking toward the heart of the enemy's territory. They are playing the part of engaged pilgrims, walking through the saccharine, ornate beauty of a city that smells of incense and impending death. Adair is a revelation. She is Tabarkan, a woman born of a war that erased her home, and she is playing her role with a razor-sharp precision that chills the marrow. She talks of hurt, of the cycle of the victim and the perpetrator, and for a moment, the distance between the goddess and the servant seems to vanish. Casper confesses to being my consort, and the honesty of it hits like a physical blow. He isn't ashamed. He is proud. He walks with the weight of my favor, an impossible, dangerous, magnificent burden. He has found the thing he was always looking for, a God worthy of his faith. And he has stopped searching. He has stopped doubting. He has simply, finally surrendered. As they stand before the licensing station, the air thickening with the threat of the city's watchful eye, the stakes shift. They are moving deeper into the throat of the beast. The butcher is waiting, and Gania is watching. The deer is learning to speak the language of power, and my sisters are laughing at the end of the world. Casper thinks he is on a mission to save souls or secure a future. He does not know that he is the cornerstone of a new reality. He doesn't know that he is the light I have chosen to keep burning when the stars go cold. He just knows that he has a job to do, and he has a goddess waiting for him in the quiet, dark spaces of his own heart. He is my consort, and as the city lights blink into view, a constellation of artificial stars, I realize that I am not just holding his hand. I am holding his fate. And heaven help the butcher when we finally collide. The road to the capital is not paved with good intentions. It is paved with stale snacks, the rhythmic hum of tires on gravel, and the suffocating silence of hostages who have realized their God is not coming to save them. We are moving through the diocese like a jagged splinter in a soft body. Casper is playing his role well. He is the quiet, brooding partner to Jordan's sharp-edged authority. But beneath the surface, he is changing. I can feel it in the way his pulse skips when he thinks of the old days. I watch him in the rearview mirror of reality as he sits with the Archbishop. Till-I-Am, once the giant whose shadow stretched over Casper's childhood, now looks like a moth-eaten rug. The conversation is sparse, but the weight of it is heavy. Casper isn't looking for forgiveness. He is looking for the death of a memory. He tells him quietly that the starvation of his youth didn't make him a saint. It just made him hollow. And now, he is being filled with something much older, much darker, and far more hungry. Till-I-Am sneers, clutching his religious pride like a shroud, but Casper just laughs. It is a dry, hollow sound, the sound of a man who has looked at the abyss and realized the abyss is currently wearing his pajamas. Then, the world narrows. The road becomes a game of cat and mouse. A blue sedan appears in the mirrors, holding its distance with the patience of a predator. Jordan, cool as frozen glass, senses it before it even makes a move. We are being hunted. We lure them. We find a quiet meadow, a place where the earth is soft enough to hide sins. The van stops, the doors open, and the mundane mask slips away. Casper does not hesitate. He doesn't pray for divine intervention, because he is carrying the divine in his own blood. He steps out, and the air ripples as his skin hardens, chitin erupting from his flesh like a black, biological armor. He is not a man anymore, not fully. He is a weapon. The violence is not the clean, cinematic dance the stories promised. It is wet, and loud, and desperate. Gunfire tears through the van's body, metal screeching in protest. Pete Moss, my little dear warlock, is chaos incarnate, headbutting through reality with a helmet of bone and a mouth full of acid. He is grotesque, he is beautiful, and he is absolutely essential. Alexander's warlock is there too, a red blur of rage. They clash, a frantic struggle of steel and snapping bone. Casper is struggling with the reach of his own claws, the reach of his own transformation, and for a moment, I feel his fear, not for his life, but for his failure. He wants to be enough for me. He wants to be the perfect instrument. He kills because he must. He tears through the red armor, his claw finding the weakness, the soft, trembling meat beneath the shell. It is efficient, brutal, and necessary. When the silence finally returns to the meadow, smelling of cordite and copper, Casper sits in the dirt, exhausted. He cleans the blood from Pete Moss's face, and he speaks of ice cream, a promise of sweetness to cleanse the taste of iron. But while my warlock rests, I am running. I slip through the cracks of the universe, chasing the dissipating souls of the dead. I track them, hungry and reckless, until the architecture of the void begins to warp. The stars here are wrong. They are teeth. I am not alone. The shadow that looms before me is not a sister. It is a catastrophe. It is a planet-sized mouth of infinite hunger, a void that makes my own power feel like a flickering candle. It speaks, and the sound is not language, but the tectonic shift of reality collapsing in on itself. It calls me sister. I flee, twisting through dimensions, my tentacles flailing, my scout forms exploding in clouds of distraction. My heart, or the closest thing I have to one, is drumming a frantic rhythm of pure, unadulterated terror. She does not chase. She doesn't need to. She is waiting. She is already in the city. She is the apocalypse, and we are walking blind and hopeful, straight into her jaws. The van is a rolling monument to tactical failure, now disguised under layers of garish, religious kitsch. It looks like a float in a parade for a god that forgot to exist. We are moving through the diocese like a frantic heartbeat in a dying chest. Jordan is chain-smoking with the desperation of someone who has already made peace with the abyss, while Casper sits up front, playing the role of the devoted husband with a terrifying, earnest calm. Pete Moss is in the back, the dear warlock who traded his innocence for a bowl of gelato. He is a walking, breathing contradiction, a creature of the wild that is learning the sweet, heavy cost of belonging to a higher power. It is funny in a way that makes your teeth ache. We are teaching a monster how to be a person, while we simultaneously prepare to tear reality apart. But while the van crawls toward the city, my sister Bina and I are drifting in the quiet, empty spaces of the void. Bina, who has spent an eternity being nothing more than a lethal, angular shadow, is changing. She has grown curves, she has grown vanity, and she has grown a terrifyingly human heart. She is obsessing over Jordan, the mortal woman who guards her, in a way that is as raw as it is grotesque. She speaks of wanting to consume her, of wanting to pull her apart just to see how the pieces fit. And for a moment, I am struck by the sheer, blinding absurdity of it all. We are gods, and we are suffering from the same, pathetic, achy-breaky human sickness that makes the mortals weep. I give her the gift of human complexity, the hormones, the nervous system, the crushing weight of vulnerability. I teach her how to be broken by another person, how to want them with a hunger that transcends the physical. She is terrified, and she is ecstatic, and she is, for the first time, truly dangerous. Because there is nothing more destructive than an ancient, hungry power that has learned how to crave. As they continue their pilgrimage, the Society of the Rail Yard is singing their off-key, soulful hymns, and my warlock is joining in, his voice a honeyed thread in the chorus of the lost. He thinks he is just a man on a bus helping a friend. He doesn't see the teeth in the sky. He doesn't see the shadow that is watching us, the one that remembers our names and is waiting for the precise moment to unmake us. We are traveling toward the heart of Pasternos, toward the relic city where the Iron Butcher waits. The van is decorated, the hostages are quiet, and the deer is learning the meaning of ice cream. It is a beautiful, fragile, and utterly doomed little parade. And I am right there with them, whispering promises of heaven in my warlock's ear, while I check the horizon for the end of everything. The game is rigged. The dice are loaded, and we are all, every single one of us, laughing as we walk toward the fire. The battle to end all battles is not a choreographed dance. It is a wet, grinding catastrophe, a collision of cosmic proportions that defies the laws of nature and common sense alike. We are not just fighting, we are tearing reality at the seams, leaving the ruins of what was once heaven stained with the visceral, impossible geometry of our war. I am an abyss, a colossal, shifting horror of shifting flesh and ancient malice, pitted against Gania. She is a nightmare made of steel and spite, a creature that looms over the wreckage of her own fortress like a monument to a god who never really cared. My sisters, those beautiful, lethal anomalies, are swarming around us like predatory stars. We are throwing ourselves into the meat grinder of existence, and for a fleeting moment, I am struck by the pure, unadulterated absurdity of it all. We are beings of unfathomable power, yet we are bleeding exactly like the pathetic, fragile mortals we pretend to despise. But down in the basement of the calf sport, the stakes are different. Smaller, much more intimate. Jordan and Casper stand in that upscale, dimly lit tomb of a gastropub, looking like lost souls who wandered into a funeral they were not invited to. They are here to meet the gun dealer, a man named Carlo who thinks he is in control. He is not. He is a dead man breathing, flanked by a tower of muscle named Everett. They are waiting for a deal. They do not realize that the Iron Butcher has already arrived to collect the tab. The bartender, a man whose indifference is a weapon in itself, makes his move. A lime-cutting knife, a simple, mundane utensil, finds a home in Carlo's eye with a wet, sickening crunch. Everett is finished off with an olive fork. The Iron Butcher, draped in pitted, archaic armor that screams of centuries of slaughter, pours a drink as if he is merely waiting for a bus. Then, the world turns to static. Casper is a man defined by his devotion, and he is lunging into the impossible. He moves with a desperate, human rhythm that is as brave as it is suicidal. He is playing a game of catch with a buzzsaw. Bones snap, flesh tears, and then, with a sickening, wet sound, it heals. Over and over again, the cycle of pain and repair is a dizzying, horrific loop that makes my own vast, internal struggle feel like a distant echo. The Butcher is a machine of pure efficiency. He doesn't think, he just deletes. He breaks Casper's collarbone as if he were snapping a twig. He turns Jordan's defiance into a bloody, broken mess. But they don't stop. They are fueled by something that makes no sense in the calculus of the void. They are fueled by each other. I am watching from the inside, a perspective that is becoming increasingly shredded. I am holding my own pocket dimension together with nothing but will and suffering. My sisters are fighting a war of attrition that is turning the sky into a graveyard of metal and gore. And yet, I am paralyzed by the smallness of what is happening in that basement. The Butcher is a monolith of iron, but he is beginning to falter. The weight of his own violence is catching up to him, dampened by the sheer stubbornness of the two mortals who refuse to stay down. Jordan, battered and drowning in the smell of spilled whiskey and her own iron-rich blood, is a blur of savage, kinetic energy. She doesn't have the luxury of being a god. She only has the luxury of being human. Gania's grip is an apocalypse. She is tearing me in half, and for the first time, I do not have a clever, cryptic metaphor to mask the agony. It is just pain. Endless, binary, absolute pain. I am a void, and the void is screaming. Then silence, or the closest thing to it. I am a ruined, fleshy husk, a beach nightmare of a creature, trembling in the wreckage. Casper finds me. He doesn't recoil. He doesn't run. He just walks into the center of my devastation, his feet finding purchase on the slick, pulsating floor of my own dying anatomy. He is small. He is frail. He is the most dangerous thing in this entire cursed universe. He sits in the middle of my entrails, pulls my shattered, leaking body into his lap, and holds me. No magic. No grand, Eldritch revelation. Just the quiet, terrifying warmth of a man who decided that he was going to love something that was meant to be feared. My world is collapsing. My sisters are fading into the static. But as he presses his forehead against my weeping, alien skin, the screaming stops. And for the first time in an eternity, I am not a god. I am just something that needs to be held. There is a specific, humbling kind of humiliation in being a cosmic horror carried piggyback by a man who smells like sawdust and good intentions. My prime form is a wreck, a sprawling, aquatic nightmare of shifting tissue and leaking essence. Yet Casper handles me as if I am nothing more than a spilled bag of groceries. I am an abyss, a terrifying, multi-limbed entity capable of unmaking cities. And yet here I am, resting my head against his neck, worrying about whether I look too much like a squid monster. He just laughs. He calls it a privilege, the kind of domestic intimacy that makes the hair on my arm stand up. We are back at the tap house, though the place feels different, transposed into the architecture of my sister Bina's domain. It is an impromptu funeral wake for the living, a collection of souls and shadows drinking cheap beer while the universe holds its breath. The air is thick with the scent of ozone and burning charcoal, a strange, autumnal dusk that feels remarkably like a home I never had. I am shattered, though. The battle with Gania took more than just flesh. It took the structural integrity of my own existence. I am leaking pain. It pools in my nerves, a jagged, relentless static that I try to mask for Casper's sake. But he sees it. He always sees it. He leans in, his hazel eyes searching mine with the quiet, devastating patience of a saint. He wants to fix it. He wants to bridge the gap between his fragility and my monstrosity. The solution is not pretty. It is a shortcut through the dark, a grisly bit of arithmetic I have avoided for millennia. To heal, I need fuel. Not the cheap, empty calories of a soul, but something more substantial. A memory, a feeling, a slice of his life, excised and served to me as a tonic. I tell him it is a terrible idea. I tell him it is like eating a leg, a grotesque amputation of the self. He does not care. He kneels before me, his expression fixed in that stubborn, beautiful, human defiance. He offers up his childhood, the first 5 years of his life, the ghosts of parents and siblings he barely remembers. I hesitate. I am a monster, but I am not a glutton. He persists. He talks about his parents as if they are strangers, as if those years are just dead weight he is happy to jettison to keep us afloat. He takes my hand, his fingers intertwining with mine, and I feel the barrier break. I do not just take the memory. I consume it. It is warm, golden, and terrifyingly sharp. The taste of sea air on a summer day, the condensation on a soda can, the specific, crinkling smile of a father who just couldn't manage one more mouth to feed. It is a flavor of innocence I have never known. It washes over my damaged systems like a balm, knitting torn shadows into solid ground. When I pull away, I am whole, but he is different. The hollowness behind his eyes is real. He reached for a part of himself and found a void. He gave it to me freely, a sacrifice of the spirit that left me breathless. I have never prayed, never begged, but in that moment, I wanted to fall to my knees for him. He is not a pawn. He is not a warlock to be used. He is the only thing in this rotting, celestial theater that feels real. We leave the others to their grim revelry, but the world does not stop spinning. Across the divide, in the mundane, greasy reality of a budget motel room, Jordan and Casper are unraveling. I watch them through the viewing pool, my heart a complex, ticking mechanism. Jordan is drunk, a wild, kinetic energy that spills out of her in loud, slurred declarations. She is loud, brash, and shockingly honest. She is talking about my sister, Bina. She is sprawled on the bed, gyrating her hips, her voice a low, raspy purr as she confesses her sudden, overwhelming attraction to the wolf woman. She thinks she is alone, thinks she is just venting to the room, but my sister is watching. Bina, who has never understood the messy, illogical mechanics of human desire, is sitting next to me with a cup of cocoa, her eyes wide as saucers, her wolf snout twitching in confusion, and something else. Something like delight. Jordan is oblivious. She is flirting with the air, with the mirror, with the ghost of a desire she never knew she had. She is raw, unguarded, and painfully hilarious. And then, the silence hits. Jordan stops mid-sentence, the alcohol finally catching up to the reality of the situation. She blinks, her head turning slowly toward the empty space of the room, as if she suddenly realizes that the walls have ears, and that those ears belong to the very creature she was just undressing with her words. She sits up, her gaze locks onto the mirror, and for a split second, her eyes widen, reflecting the dawning, horrific realization that she has just told the universe, and perhaps its most dangerous inhabitant, exactly what she wants to do with it. The laughter dies in her throat. The room goes deadly quiet, and I realize with a sinking, jagged thrill that the game has just changed. The cake left a phantom taste on the tongue, something yeasty and thin, like cheap beer and forgotten birthdays. When the plate dissolved into nothingness beneath our feet, the reality of it settled in, a cold realization that we were not merely guests in my sister's domain, but parasites feeding on the architecture of her own being. I slipped from the inspector's mind before the questions became too loud, but I caught the aftershave and the ache of her thoughts. She is unraveling, Jordan. One moment she is a hardened weapon, the next she is a child staring into the impossible, watching a man who shouldn't exist materialize in the doorway. It was the cruelest form of magic, providing a ghost to heal a wound that should have scarred over decades ago. I left them to their reunion, a private tragedy unfolding in a house made of gut and memory. My warlock, meanwhile, was playing armchair therapist to a legend. Casper sat there, gun resting against his ribs, trying to reason with the Iron Butcher. It was a scene of absurd, dark comedy. The man who could have unmade us all was sitting in a puddle of his own failures, and my Casper, who smells of sawdust and unwavering resolve, was offering him a path to redemption. There is a specific kind of madness in his kindness, a refusal to let the world turn him into the monster he fights. He treats the butcher like a stray dog that needs a nap, offering a week of peace instead of a bullet. It makes me want to scream and worship him in equal measure. The week stretched out before us like a threat and a promise. A week of silence in a world that has only offered us noise, trauma, and the constant threat of extinction. When I finally pulled him back into the quiet space of my room, he was tired, worn down by the friction of existence. We are a study in contrasts, the god and the gardener, the abyss and the man with the dirt under his fingernails. I laid myself out for him, not as the entity that tears holes in the sky, but as a woman, a fragile, trembling collection of desires. He didn't just touch me, he navigated me, mapping the landscape of my new body with a reverence that felt like prayer. It was not the clumsy fumbling of a lover, but the precise, careful work of an artist restoring a masterpiece. Every brush of his skin against mine was a negotiation, a quiet exchange of power where I became the subordinate, surrendering the weight of eternity to the steady, beating heart of a human. There is a terrifying vulnerability in being held by someone who could, if he chose, leave. He treated my body like a temple, or perhaps a sanctuary, ignoring the scars of my battles in favor of the softness I had curated just for him. I had cast aside the tentacles, the geometry of horror, and the crushing gravity of my own nature, just to be something he could wrap his arms around. In the heat of it, when the lines between our souls began to blur, the world outside ceased to exist. There was only the friction of skin, the shared breath, and the singular, maddening need to be owned by him. It was a slow, agonizing descent into the marrow of human experience, stripping away the pretension of godhood until there was nothing left but two people, drowning in one another. He was my gravity, the only thing holding me to the earth while everything else threatened to drift into the void. And then, in the haze of our shared surrender, he spoke, his voice grounding me more than any spell ever could. It was not a grand proclamation, not a decree from the heavens, but a simple, terrifying question. A question that turned my insides to liquid fire, a commitment that defied the entropy of our lives. We were breathless, tangled in the wreckage of our own making, and I realized with a shudder that I would have burned the stars to say yes. I looked at the ring that had appeared, a shimmering promise on his finger, and then at my own, and the irony tasted like ash and honey. We had reached the precipice, the point of no return where the absurdity of our union was finally codified in the language of the mortals we claimed to disdain. I laughed, a jagged, wet sound that died against his lips. We had slaughtered our way to this moment, eaten our fill of the world, and now we were going to pretend we could build something normal out of the ruins. I looked at him, my husband, the man who had seen the monster and decided to love it anyway, and I felt the last tiny shard of my divinity crack. I was not his goddess anymore. I was his wife. And for the first time in 1,000 years, I was terrified because I had finally found something I was afraid to lose. So, what do you do when you've already eaten the parents of the person you're marrying, and the invitation list is basically a who's who of the afterlife? I am officially a wife. Or, at least, I am practicing the title on my husband until the universe decides to stop throwing eldritch threats our way long enough for a proper ceremony. The whole engagement process is a bizarrely delightful human ritual, full of promise and anticipation, and frankly, I am already over the waiting part. We were lounging in the quiet aftermath, playing a game of strategy where I was gleefully crushing him. It is a strange thrill, watching his hazel eyes track the board, trying to comprehend the rules of a game he has only just started to play. I am teaching him, and in return, he is teaching me the fine art of being human. I found myself thinking of ways to customize my own biology, a little nip here, a flavor adjustment there, perhaps something tropical, just to keep his attention fixed entirely on me. He thinks I am weird. I prefer the term evolving. We talked about the wedding, a real one, with guests and traditions. A spectacle to mark the first time an old one and a human dared to rewrite the rules. He mentioned his family, his cousin, his unit, people who represent a lifetime of history I have never known. It would take decades to get them all in one place, or perhaps, in the case of some, a very creative interpretation of a death-defying invitation. I suggested a shortcut, but he hushed me with the stern, gentle authority of a man who knows my capacity for destruction and refuses to let me use it. He doesn't want to kill them. He wants to cherish them. It is a stubborn, beautiful, and utterly frustrating human trait. I hid my own thoughts behind a veil of affection. I don't want his days in that miserable, broken world. I want his nights, his forever, and his undivided existence here with me. When he finally gets that key we are chasing, I want him to stop being a casualty of a cosmic war and start being mine. Completely. Then I decided to give him a gift. A single syllable from my tongue. It wasn't just a word. It was a frequency, a sound that vibrates the very marrow of existence. It cost him a drop of blood from his ear, a small price for the kind of understanding that poetry fails to capture. For a moment, the boundaries between us dissolved, and he understood exactly what he is to me. He couldn't say it back, but I felt the echo of it in his heartbeat. I told him the truth then about the end of everything, about the egg. Humanity, as it exists now, is just a gestation period. A cocoon. The afterlife isn't a final destination. It's the hatching phase. When humanity eventually fades and goes extinct, they don't vanish. They transcend. They become something like me, something old and vast and eternal. My heaven is just the nest, the place where they can learn to stop being small and start being everything. He was terrified, of course. It's a lot to process, the idea that the soul is not a static thing, but a seedling waiting for the right soil. He worried about losing himself, about becoming something unrecognizable. I held him, and I promised him that we are the exception. We are the anomaly. I will never let him drift into the gestalt of his own species. We will be untethered, drifting through eternity together, making everyone else in the cosmos infinitely jealous of our mess. I showed him what I used to be 1,000,000,000 years ago, before I chose this face and this skin. It was a glutinous, draping thing, a manifestation of a race that long ago turned into something else. He looked, he hummed, and he accepted it with the same bewildered, charming grace he brings to everything else. But as the night deepened, the silence grew heavy. He finally asked the question we have both been avoiding. What if we fail? What if the adversary wins? What if the universe is just a cage, and we are just cattle waiting for the slaughter? I didn't lie to him. I admitted the fear that has been gnawing at the edges of my existence. If we lose, there is no egg, no transcendence, no eternity. Just oblivion. He didn't pull away. He didn't offer empty platitudes. He simply held me, his weight grounding me in a reality that felt, for the first time, more precious than divinity. We have built this sanctuary out of blood and promises, and if the end is coming, we will meet it exactly as we are. We have tonight, and for now, that is enough. Hosting my sisters on a quiet, dewy hill should have been peaceful. Instead, the air crackled with the kind of static you feel right before a lightning strike. We were all together for the first time since the war, and the dynamic was delicate. It was a collection of gods and monsters, forced into a truce that felt more like a cage. Gania offered an apology, but it wasn't warm. It was tactical, stripped of sentiment, like a machine calculating the most efficient way to lower the tension. She had torn me in half once, and while I accepted her words, the scar tissue remained. Salome was less convinced, her sharp, jagged edges vibrating with unresolved annoyance. It is a strange thing, watching deities bicker like children fighting over a broken toy, while the fate of reality hangs in the balance. Then came the butcher. Gania's warlock, a man forged in blood and iron, stood before us. The expectation was that he would become our new soldier, our weapon to point at the enemy. Instead, Gania did something that shattered the group's expectations. She kept her promise to him. She didn't demand more slaughter. She simply told him to go, to live, to find something resembling happiness, and then return to her side when his time was done. It was a quiet moment of grace in a world built on cruelty. Watching him walk away, unburdened by the weight of a god's expectations, was a revelation. Even the cruelest of us are capable of keeping a vow. The tension eventually bled away, replaced by the bizarre domesticity of our mortal companions. It is jarring, truly, to see beings who could erase cities, now plaiting hair or arguing about safety protocols for a magical fawn with a gun. Yes, Pete Moss found a weapon, and suddenly my husband was playing the frantic parent, chasing a creature of myth across the grass as it accidentally threatened reality with a trigger pull. The mood shifted, moving away from the celestial and into the muddy, desperate reality of the road. Casper and the inspector were moving toward the heart of the diocese, Relic City, a place of suffocating, holy architecture. It is a city that eats people, and they were walking right into its gilded mouth. As they traveled, the humor of the road trip died down. Jordan, the inspector, the woman who had walked through hell, was struggling. She spoke to Casper in the dark of a cheap motel room about the air fresheners. That is what they called it in her old life, a bureaucratic term for murdering the innocent to cover up a mistake, to satisfy a quota, to keep the peace. It was a chilling reminder of the world they were fighting to change. She wasn't just grieving for the people she killed, she was grieving for the person she used to be, the monster that lived behind her badge. Casper held her hand in the dark, a brother to a sister in arms, bridging the gap between their shared trauma. He offered her the only truth we have left, that justice is a story we tell ourselves to survive the night. They are in the belly of the beast now. Relic City. They stand in the shadow of the Dominion Guards, 7-foot-tall suits of polished steel designed to hunt and destroy warlocks. They are looking at the enemy, and the enemy is looking back. I wonder, as I watch them through the fraying threads of the void, if they know that they are walking into a trap set by history itself. The question isn't whether they can survive the guards. The question is, what happens to a soul when it stops running and finally decides to start a war? The bathrooms in the Hall of the Pious Crusaders are a study in contrasts. They are impeccably clean, polished marble and brass. Yet they feature those ridiculous motion sensor taps that require the interpretive dance skills of a professional performer just to dispense a single drop of water. It is a minor indignity in a city that treats holiness like a luxury brand. Casper splashed water over his face. He is wearing an evoked disguise, a mask of static and light that hides his true features from the prying eyes of the city. We have both become missing persons, faces plastered on corner posters and bulletin boards, transforming our lives into a frantic, high-stakes game of hide-and-seek. The physical toll is real. Dizzy spells are the souvenirs of constant magical exertion, but it is also, in a twisted way, the best training he has ever had. He wandered into the Golden Chamber, where his own legacy is preserved in limestone. A statue of a militia trooper, brutalist and rigid, standing guard for a war that has long since ended. He looked at it with a mix of bemusement and phantom ache. It was a cartoonish version of his past, all oversized shoulders and tiny feet, capturing none of the grit or the terror, but plenty of the propaganda. Jordan stood beside him, her humor sharp enough to draw blood. She poked at the statue's lack of proportion, but she saw the flicker of longing in Casper's eyes. He told me he didn't miss it, but my husband is a terrible liar. He misses the simplicity of it. The uniform, the camaraderie, the comfort of having someone else tell him exactly who to shoot and why. Before the world broke him, he loved the machine. The rest of the day was a blur of high-end tailoring. We have stolen Archbishop money to burn, so we spent it. A boutique in the linen quarter. The smell of expensive wool and the quiet, frantic energy of tailors trying to dress a man built for armor. I watched him try on shirts, his chest bared, and the feeling wasn't illicit anymore. It was just absolute, terrifying possession. He is mine. Then the mission shifted. The target, Till I Am, is attending a party. And he is bringing a complication, his wife, Rebecca. The strategy room was crowded, filled with the hum of electronics and the heavy, metallic presence of Gania. The plan is simple, brutal, and potentially messy. But then, there is the problem of the innocent. Jordan, in her blunt way, suggested a permanent solution for Rebecca. Casper, with the stubborn morality that keeps him human, refused. We are fighting a war against the abyss, but he refuses to let the abyss dictate his soul. While they navigated the politics of assassins and politicians, I traveled into the heart of the labyrinth. My sister Alexandra is hiding in a fortress of architectural madness, a twisted nest of spires that defies geometry. Gania carried me on her back, a titan of rusted metal and war, moving through corridors that would make a mortal mind shatter. The sisters are not okay. Distrust, guilt, and the jagged edges of a war that never truly ended linger in the air. I walked with Gania, the sister who once tore me apart. We stood on the bridge of her warship domain, looking out at the madness, and for a moment, the goddess of war and the goddess of love had nothing but the silence. We talked of the end. We talked of humanity, not as pawns, not as fodder, but as the next step, a species that could grow into something eternal, something like us. Gania admitted she once viewed them only as tools for conquest, a training ground for the perfection of violence. But she has changed. She has the butcher, and she has seen that there is a different kind of strength in the way humans hold on to their own, a quiet, terrifying proficiency. We are not the gods we were. We are tired, we are fractured, and we are desperately trying to build a future out of the ruins of our failures. I left Gania to her war room and headed for the mess hall, where the tea is acceptable and my husband is waiting. The war is coming, and it will be loud. But for now, there is a quiet moment in a crowded room, a cup of tea, and the man who makes even eternity feel like a place worth staying. I am Mrs. Cartwright, and I have never been more afraid of losing everything. The party was a blur of opulence that felt like it was staged on the deck of a sinking ship. Casper picked at a piece of seared meat, the sumac and oregano hitting his palate with a precision that felt offensive given the circumstances. He was moving through the crowd with the practiced invisibility of a man who knows that being seen is a liability. It was funny, in a bleak, jagged way. This room was filled with people who were playing at importance while we were navigating the architecture of the end times. I watched him from the periphery, tethered to him by a promise I had made to myself. I was going to learn how to dance, not the awkward, lurching shuffle of a war-weary entity, but something fluid and human, something that belonged in a room like this with him. He was looking for Jordan, and when he found her, she was a masterpiece of cold, lethal elegance. She looked the part of a high-society guest, even if her dress made her feel like a shark in a sequined costume. The Archbishop Paul Till-I-Am was a man whose soul had been hollowed out by greed and polished with rouge. Adair led him away, a puppeteer guiding her favorite doll, and the moment they vanished into the utility halls, the masquerade ended. The bathroom was cold, sterile, and smelled of ozone. Tilliam's face collapsed into a mask of pure, unadulterated zeal when he saw us. the spawn of the adversary invading his sanctuary. But he was a man built on glass foundations. A dare, with the terrifying, gentle touch of a predator, dismantled his resolve. She didn't need to break his bones. She just needed to touch the rod in his heart. When she whispered her true name, he didn't just lose his fight. He lost his reality. He was a broken toy when we finally let him out. A man who had built his life on the pretense of holiness was now being driven by the very people he deemed monsters. The irony was so thick it could have choked him, but he was beyond irony. He was just empty. Meanwhile, in the labyrinthine madness of my sister Alexandra's nest, the air was thick with the scent of rose petals and dried blood. She appeared to us in a storm of scarlet plumage, her eyes wide with a frantic, crystalline terror. The conversation that followed wasn't just a disagreement. It was a post-mortem of our entire existence. Melino. The name hung in the air like a death sentence. We had all believed her gone, a martyr swallowed by our sister Eight's bottomless hunger. But Alexandra claimed she was still there, trapped in the void of Eight's gut, manifesting and whispering of a reunion. It was a lie or a tragedy or a trap. I didn't know which. Alexandra was betting her life on the idea that if she played along, if she stayed in Eight's good graces, she might survive. It was the frantic calculus of the doomed. Gania's presence beside me was a heavy, metallic anchor, but even she couldn't dismiss the poison of Alexandra's fear. As our sister dissolved back into the shadows, leaving behind a drift of feathers that looked like a crime scene on the floor, I felt the cold grip of reality. We were fighting, yes. We were clawing for a key and building a life out of stolen moments and stolen identities. But Alexandra's terror was a mirror. It reflected the possibility that we were just delaying the inevitable, that our efforts were just noise before the silence. I leaned against Gania's steel plating, the cold vibrating against my skin. We were fighting. That had to be enough. But as I stared into the dark where Alexandra had vanished, I couldn't help but wonder if the door was already locked, and we were just rearranging the furniture in a room that was about to be erased. The performance of being perfect is exhausting, isn't it? It is a full-time job where the pay is just enough validation to keep you starving. Rebecca Till-I-Am lived it, day in and day out, balancing the weight of her husband's reputation like a crown of thorns. She walked into that hotel room not knowing it was the stage for her final act, the one where the curtain falls and nobody cheers. Her feet were screaming in those expensive, towering heels, the kind that force you to look graceful while your bones protest. That was her life, really. A beautiful, agonizing limp through the corridors of someone else's success. She expected a reunion with her husband, a man who had become more of a business partner than a partner in anything else. She didn't expect the bouquet, a pathetic, trembling collection of stems held by a man who looked like he wanted to dissolve into the floorboards. She reached for the flowers, an automatic, polite gesture, but the bouquet wasn't a gift. It was a secret. Tucked between the stems was a jagged piece of cardboard, a scrap of paper that screamed a truth she wasn't ready to hear. Help, I am a hostage. It was a bizarre, tragic punchline to a marriage that had been hollow for years. Then, everything fractured. A blur of movement, a sharp, cold snap, and the world simply stopped being a hotel room. She woke up in the woods. Not the afterlife she had been promised in dusty church pews, but a quiet, autumn-drenched forest. She was dead, of course, though it took a few minutes for the reality to settle into her marrow. I was there waiting. I had to be. My husband's work is messy, and I have always been the one to clean up the pieces, to gather the souls that fall through the cracks of his complicated battles. She was confused, naturally. Who wouldn't be? She kept looking for the catch, the script, the hidden camera. She even tried to scream, a primal, lung-bursting sound that tore through the trees, searching for a release she had denied herself for decades. I gave her the truth, not gently, but directly. We walked together, away from the woods and toward the strange, burgeoning village of the departed. She was a celebrity, a face known to millions, yet here, she was just a woman with hiking boots and a profound sense of loss. We watched the aftermath through a portal of my own making, a swirling, liquid window into the world she had just exited. It was colder than any horror movie to see her own body treated like a prop, rolled up in a carpet like an unwanted rug. She watched her husband weep, a man who had sold her out for a convenience he didn't even deserve, and then she watched the impersonation begin. Another woman, one of ours, wearing Rebecca's life like a stolen coat. It was a heist of the soul. She didn't turn away. She pressed her hand against the viewing pane, not with hatred, but with a strange, heavy clarity. She finally saw the machinery of her own life, the way she had been constructed and deconstructed by people who never truly saw her. We spoke about it, the agony of womanhood, the impossible standards, the way she had been molded into a shape that hurt to hold. She was a songstress without a stage, a wife without a partner, and a believer without a God. And yet, she was beautiful in her resilience. She had lived a life of quiet desperation, thinking it was the only way to be loved, only to find out that the people who demanded her perfection were the ones who destroyed her. As we descended the hill toward the community of the lost, I saw a shift in her. The polish of the archbishop's wife was fading, replaced by something raw and honest. She wasn't an angel, and she certainly wasn't going back to the life she lost. She was something else entirely, a new beginning, forged in the wake of an ending she didn't choose. I have always struggled with being the one who meets the dead, the one who guides them through the dark. It is a lonely, thankless job, but looking at her, seeing the way she was already planning to sing again, to exist outside of the gaze of her husband, I felt a familiar, sharp ache. I had spent so much time just observing the chaos of our mission, but in the silence of the forest, I realized I was building something. A home, maybe for the people the world had discarded. And I knew, with the certainty of a cold winter, that we were only just getting started. The tap house air was thick with the scent of damp earth and the unspoken weight of what had happened to the queen of the screen. Rebecca Wallace, the woman who had haunted every teenage dream and adult fantasy for a decade, sat among us, vibrant and terrifyingly mortal. Casper, my husband, was practically tripping over his own tongue with apologies, but the woman herself just gave a dismissive wave. It was Miss Wallace now. The illusion was gone, replaced by a strange, hollowed-out peace that only the dead seemed to possess. Then Adair walked in. The room didn't just go quiet, it froze. Adair wore the casual, bored expression of someone who had just finished a grocery run, not someone who had recently decapitated the most famous woman in the diocese. Casper's face was a study in controlled rage, his jaw tight enough to crack stone. But Adair didn't blink. She served her mistress, and in the grand architecture of our war, a dead actress was just another pawn moved to the right square. The mission was simple, and yet it felt like walking into a meat grinder. We had to access the Basilica Pastornica, the heart of the enemy's power. The plan was as audacious as it was insane. We were to be canonized as war heroes, ghosts in the machine of the church, using fake identities to slip through the catacombs like maggots in a corpse. Down in the catacombs, the world wasn't what you'd expect. It wasn't just dust and spiderwebs. It was a sprawling, subterranean railway system. Cities of bone, built by centuries of the dead, all humming with the cold, electric heartbeat of the church's secrets. Riding that rail car through the dark, surrounded by the remnants of millions, was a reminder of why we were fighting. Every bone in those walls was a testimony to a heaven that had gone rotten. The password was a string of holy-sounding nonsense that tasted like ash in the mouth, but it worked. We moved through the deep, sterile backrooms of the scriptorium, a place where high-tech servers hissed behind gilt frames and ozone smells choked the incense. Watching Casper and Jordan struggle with the keyboard was almost funny. Two hardened fighters reduced to hunt-and-peck typists while the fate of the afterlife dangled on a backslash. But then, the simplicity of the plan hit a wall. As we rattled back through the tunnels, the darkness ahead wasn't empty. It was punctuated by the harsh, predatory gleam of a firing line. A dozen automatic weapons lit the ossuary with a strobe of muzzle flashes, turning the air into a storm of lead. We hadn't been clever enough. We had been expected. I watched through the bond, feeling the frantic, adrenaline-soaked terror of my husband as he realized the trap. But the real nightmare emerged behind the firing line. It was hulking chrome and unmistakably engineered for the sole purpose of ending us. Eight's warlocks hadn't just come to fight. They had brought a Dominion suit. The tunnel began to scream as the machine stepped forward, its heavy metallic stride resonating against the ancient, brittle bones of the dead. We were trapped in a graveyard, speeding toward a death that had been waiting for us in the dark. The tracks ahead were a blur, the station lights were dying, and for the first time in a long time, the shadow of our end felt very, very close. The air in the catacombs wasn't just cold. It was heavy, vibrating with the rhythm of gunfire, so intense it sounded like a single, unending scream. My world had turned into a frantic blur of adrenaline, sulfur, and the metallic tang of blood. Jordan, my partner, my sister-in-arms, had been the first to go silent, her body broken by the impossible firepower of the Dominion suit. I didn't have time to mourn. I had to move, to act, to survive. With Pete Moss, my bizarre, acid-spitting deer companion, I became a desperate animal clawing for survival. The Dominion suit, a chrome nightmare of hydraulics and hate, was hunting us. Every move I made was a gamble against an opponent built specifically to neutralize everything I was. I felt my own strength, the strange, dark gifts I'd been granted, pushing my body past the breaking point. Bone knit back together, teeth shattered and reformed, and my skin became a map of scars and survival. The suplex that finally ended the suit was a moment of pure, raw carnage. It wasn't a fight. It was an eviction notice delivered with enough force to shatter the silence of the ancient ossuary. The resulting explosion didn't just wreck the cart. It tore the world apart, sending us stumbling into the dark. But the victory felt like ash in my mouth. Jordan was gone, her final, haunting words echoing in my mind like a eulogy for the life we were supposed to have. The escape back to the surface was a fever dream. I was a phantom, shedding my ridiculous uniform as I sprinted through the basilica, a ghost in the machine of the enemy's own design. My body was a ruin of torn muscles and re-knit bone, but my mind was a singular, terrifying focus. I was running not just from the Templars and the remaining Dominion, but from the crushing weight of the failure I carried in my chest. Cornered in a luxury apartment, with the chrome terror leaping toward me like a predator, I took one last, desperate shot. I cast a spell that tore through the building, a word of raw frustration that shattered glass and blew eardrums and threw my enemy back into the night. My mouth was a mess of blood, my jaw a symphony of grinding agony, but I didn't stop. I jammed Pete into a fridge, I threw myself through a window, and I kept running. I'm still running. Every step feels like a betrayal of the dead. Every breath a reminder of what it costs to stay in the game. I don't know if there's a finish line. I don't even know if I'm still the man who walked into those woods. But I know this. The rage is still burning, and as long as I have the strength to stand, I won't be the one who stays in the dark. The silence of the city behind me is thick with the promise of more pain. My ears are ringing with the ghost of Jordan's laugh, a cruel, beautiful reminder of the cost of freedom. I look at my hands, stained with the dust of the catacombs and the blood of my enemies, and I realize there is no going back to who I was. The hunt is on, and for the first time, I think I'm the one who is truly dangerous. How long can I keep running before the darkness finally decides to stop waiting and start catching up? The warehouse air is stale, hanging heavy with the scent of ozone and dust, but in the center sits a perfect, gleaming model kitchen, an absurd altar to domesticity in a place built for decay. Adair stands there, looking as unbothered as ever, discussing the Archbishop like he is a broken appliance we need to toss out. He is becoming a liability, a loose thread in a tapestry we are trying to weave in the dark. The decision is made, not with malice, but with the cold, surgical efficiency that only the Sisters of the Void seem to possess. We hold a convocation, a meeting of minds across the veil, where the fate of a man's soul is treated with the same weight as a grocery list, an affirmative vote for his end. It is decided. The Archbishop must be dismantled and put back together. Adair moves with the grace of a predator that has finally stopped pretending to be domesticated. There is a flash of steel, a sickening wet sound, and the man who once held the power of the diocese is nothing more than a heap on the floor. But death, for us, is rarely a destination. It is merely a change of address. He returns, gasping for air, his heart now beating to a different rhythm, marked by the crest of the wolf tooth. He is broken, hollowed out, and rebuilt. The aftermath leaves me in the kitchen with Adair, the air between us thick with an argument that spans generations. She speaks of civilization as a terminal illness, a rotting apple that needs to be crushed so something new can grow. She sees the collapse of the theocracy not as a tragedy, but as a necessary, brutal surgery. I see the people. I see the suffering that comes with the fire. We are not just destroying an enemy, we are burning the house down with everyone inside, and she accepts that as the price of doing business. It is a cynical, jagged philosophy that cuts deeper than any blade. While we deal in blood and blueprints, the reality on the other side of the veil is a quiet, haunting contrast. Jordan sits in a mausoleum, painting happy little trees, her fingers stained with cedar and oil. She is dead, yet her heart still insists on beating, a persistent, rhythmic lie that she doesn't know how to stop. She talks to Bina about the strangeness of it all, the feeling of drifting, the desire to stop being a person and just become a part of something larger. It is a quiet grief, the kind that doesn't scream but just settles into your bones like winter frost. I leave that place with the weight of her goodbye still on my skin, a half-hug that was meant to span the gap between life and whatever this is. Back in the world of the living, the music starts. It is a thundering, jagged rhythm, the kind that shakes the floorboards of a dive bar. A man named Abraham steps up to the mic, his face etched with the kind of lines only a soldier earns. He doesn't look at the crowd. He looks into the distance, singing a song for a ghost. In a dark, neon-lit bar, people sing along, unaware that they are participating in a conversation between dimensions. And somewhere else, on the other side of the veil, Jordan stands on her seat, laughing and crying, singing the chorus of a song that should have been hers, while the darkness listens in. And for a moment, the distance between the dead and the living feels like it might just vanish entirely. The paperback on my chest is a relic of a life I am only just beginning to remember, a bookmark caught in the page of a story I already know the ending to. I run my fingers over the paper, but the message from Irene is what catches my breath. It is not printed in ink, but scribbled in the margins of my own existence. I stand up, and the apartment is a masterclass in haunting accuracy. Every detail is perfect, right down to the crooked nail Ernie drove into the wall, but it is the subtle shift that hurts the most. The delicate ceramic cup in the kitchen, the soft, violet hue of things that were once only mine. It is a home, now, and the ache of it is a physical weight. I find her in the bedroom. She is trying to crochet, her fingers moving with a clumsy, beautiful ambition that makes me want to laugh and cry at once. She is learning to be a person, learning the quiet, mundane rhythms of a life that is supposed to be ours. We lie in the bed, the mattress expanding to accommodate a future I am not sure we will ever get to inhabit. I can feel the life in her, the strange, alien warmth of a creature that has decided to love a human with the terrifying intensity of a star. She talks about eternity. She talks about quiet evenings and closets smelling of varnish, about crosswords and aerostats. She is painting a picture of heaven, but every stroke of her brush is layered over the reality of the impending war. I am terrified, and for the first time I do not bother to hide it. I tell her I am scared of the end, scared of the way they will look at my body, scared of the silence that follows the last breath. And then she asks me for the impossible. She asks me to choose her over the world. And I say yes. It is the only answer I have ever really had. The dance hall is a ghost of a celebration, a bright, loud, pine-scented defiance of the dark. I shake Ed's hand, and for a moment, the years between us vanish, leaving only two men who finally understand the cost of their own righteousness. The others are gathering in the shadows, waiting for the signal, moving like pieces on a board set for a final, desperate play. We are soldiers marching toward a ledge, but tonight, we are just people, laughing and trading promises we are not sure we can keep. The throne room is freezing, a drafty, hollow monument to a faith that has been rotting from the inside out for centuries. Armos sits on his throne, a frail, confused king playing at godhood, surrounded by the remnants of his own fading empire. He talks of pilgrims and cactus jokes, his mind a patchwork quilt of memories that no longer hold together. He looks at me, and he sees a brother in the light. He has no idea that I am the match that is about to turn his world to ash. I move toward the dais, my heart a frantic bird against my ribs. I look at the guards, the dominions, the terrifying, chrome-plated reality of the palace, and I wish for a sky that isn't choked with the smoke of what is coming. Adair is a blade in human form, Till-I-Am is a man holding his breath, and Pete Moss is a monster learning to be a boy. I leap. My hand reaches for the key, for the weight that holds the universe in balance, but the world tilts. The suzerain is not the frail old man I expected. He is a nightmare wrapped in skin, his eyes wide and hungry, his strength a crushing, absolute force. I feel him expand, a void blooming in the center of the room, and then I am pushed out, discarded like a broken tool. The chains of the great gate shatter, a sound like the sky itself tearing open. The lock gives way, and what lies behind it is not the paradise we were promised. It is not light, and it is not peace. It is hunger, and it is waiting for us to come home. The throne room is no longer a hall of worship. It is a scream frozen in stone. With a single word, the atmosphere itself ruptures. Glass shatters like a million falling stars, and the grand architecture begins to buckle under a force that shouldn't exist in this reality. I am tossed aside, a ragdoll in the grip of a tectonic shift, landing hard against the cold, unyielding floor as the world turns into a splintering mess of brass and splintered timber. The Dominion soldiers are supposed to be gods of war, but their training means nothing when faced with the raw, chaotic static of a soul push to the breaking point. They fire blindly into the dust, their heavy weaponry chewing through masonry instead of targets. I scramble for cover, lungs burning, the taste of iron and ozone thick on my tongue. I am breathing in the end of everything. The suzerain stands amidst the ruin, his voice a smooth, treacherous melody. He speaks of divinity, of culling, and of a heaven built on the bones of those who didn't fit the mold. It is a terrifying, clinical madness. He thinks he is a gardener pruning a hedge, but he is merely feeding a beast that is currently tearing the horizon apart. Above us, the sky is being stitched together by teeth and hungry, grasping things. The gate is open, and the thing waiting on the other side doesn't want our prayers. It wants to consume. I see Molino, or the thing that wears her skin, drifting through the chaos like a stain of ink in water. She offers peace. She offers a way to stop being a person, to stop the constant, grinding friction of existing. It is tempting in the most horrific way to just let go and dissolve into the void, to stop fighting for a future that seems determined to choke us. But that is the lie the darkness tells to make the light go out quietly. My husband stands at the edge of the abyss. He is broken, his body a testament to the brutality of this crusade, yet he refuses to fold. He looks at the monster in human clothing, and he does not beg. He does not bargain. He knows the game is rigged, but he decides to burn the board anyway. The violence that follows is swift, sickening, and absolute. There is a sound like the universe snapping a bone. The suzerain rises, encased in a shell of eldritch nightmare, his power absolute and terrible. He mocks us, he smashes Casper into the metal, he tries to force the final submission. It is a masterclass in cruelty, the kind that expects the victim to finally break and crawl. But even as the shadows swallow the light, there is a connection that refuses to be severed. We are touching through the veil, a moment of agonizing intimacy before the final act. We are both dying, and we are both choosing to go down swinging. I am crying, and I am screaming, but more than that, I am waiting. Casper is slumped on a throne that has become a tomb. He is a ruin of flesh and bone, his heart stuttering like a dying engine. The suzerain stands over him, gloating, unaware that he is standing on a landmine. My husband's eyes close, not in surrender, but in focus. He is not praying to the gods they claim to serve. He is calling for me. The seal on his heart flares, a brilliant, terrifying light that cuts through the suffocating gloom of the throne room. The reality around us begins to fray, the edges of the world curling like paper in a furnace. I don't just feel him, I am him. I am the shadow in his pulse and the fire in his veins. The suzerain realizes his mistake, but it is far, far too late. He lunges, a frantic, desperate movement, but the threshold has already been crossed. I am coming through. The universe is not ending with a whimper. It is ending with a massacre, and for a moment, I am the only thing that matters in the absolute carnage of the void. My grief is a physical weight, a tectonic force that tears through reality like wet paper. I dismantle the Dominion soldiers not with strategy, but with a blind, howling need for retribution. They are brittle things, fragile clockwork toys that shatter under the pressure of a god who has lost her husband. I do not remember the moment I killed the suzerain. I only remember the iron tang of blood and the key, heavy and slick with the gore of a fallen tyrant, sitting in my palm. The battle is a fever dream of teeth and entropy, a sky choked with monsters. But my focus is a needle, sharp and terrified. I need the key. I need to stop the hunger that is tearing my family apart. When the surge comes, when the reality finally snaps into place, it is a symphony of sound that clears the static from the air. The gate buckles, the structures of heaven fracture, and the thing that was eating my husband is forced to vomit him back into existence. He lands like a broken doll in the dust. My Casper. He is scorched raw, and his hair is slashed through with a shock of silver, as if the void itself tried to brand him. He looks at me with eyes that have bled out their color, replaced by a clouded, alien slate. I am terrified that he is gone, that the man I married was consumed, and only the shell returned to me. But then, the human absurdity of it cuts through the cosmic horror. He does not ask for salvation or grand declarations of faith. He asks for chicken parm. The incongruity of it makes me weep. The sheer, beautiful normalcy of his hunger grounding me when I was ready to float away into madness. He is here. He is broken, but he is here. The world above us, the world of the living, has been irrevocably altered. The suzerain is dead, his tyranny replaced by the truth, and our names are whispered in prayers across a terrified, waking planet. We are the new gods, the pantheon of the void, and frankly, we are a mess. We are sisters and monsters, healers and hunters, and we are learning how to be a family in the ruins of an empire. The bonfire at the end of the world is a strange place to begin an eternity, but it suits us. The music is new, the drinks are cold, and the company is, well, eternal. There is no more fighting for the sake of survival, only the strange, quiet business of living in the aftermath. My husband, my warlock, my anchor, sits by the fire, his new golden eyes reflecting the flames. He does not miss the life he had, not really, because he is here, and that is enough. We are beyond the mortal coil now, beyond the petty cruelties of kings and cardinals. The future is an unwritten page, stretched out into the infinite black. We dance in the forest, the fireflies tracing arcs of light around us. And for the first time in an age, I am not a goddess of the abyss. I am just a wife. I am just a woman who has walked through hell to bring her husband home. He holds me, and the abyss holds us both, a warm, shivering embrace that promises a love that will not fade, will not wither, and will not end. The cycle of suffering is broken, replaced by something wilder and far more enduring. We have our eternity. We have the kitchen counters and the greasy takeout, the elegant feasts and the quiet, sleepy mornings, the messy, beautiful reality of a life that was supposed to be impossible. I have him, and he has me, and as the darkness settles around us, I know that this is not the end. This is simply when we begin to live. The thing about human stories is that they always slam the door shut with the words, happily ever after. You treat it like a final period, a fancy font at the end of a film, a way to stop thinking about the messy, complicated intersection of love and time. But you never really ask what comes next. You never ask if eternity is a gift or a heavy, crushing weight. So, let us try something different. Let us peel back the glossy cover of that old fairy tale and look at what actually remains when the clock stops ticking. My husband and I, we live, happily ever after. Death is not the end of the conversation. It is merely the opening ceremony. When you eventually find your way to our shores, please try to be patient. I was never meant to be the greeter for the afterlife, the psychopomp of a pantheon, but here we are. It is my job to help you navigate this transition, to show you that while your mortal life, that beautiful, frantic, flickering candle of existence, has dimmed, the real work is just beginning. Humanity, as you knew, it had a lifespan, a short, sputtering trajectory that ended once you started playing with the fundamental forces of the universe. It was a predictable, quiet tragedy. But in the grand scheme, it matters little. You arrive here with your various religions, your anxieties, and your fears, only to realize that the truth is far grander than any book you ever burned or any idol you ever prayed to. We are still here, my sisters, our partners, and a whole landscape of anomalies and lost things waiting to be sorted. We have built something new out of the ruins of the old. We spend our days wandering the intersections of infinite dimensions, driving the same old vehicles through the impossible architecture of the cosmos, because comfort is a habit that even gods find hard to break. Paradise is a strange thing to get used to. At first, you want to consume it all, to taste every pleasure and satisfy every curiosity you stifled while you were tethered to a fragile, dying body. You take centuries just to read the books you never touched or to mend the relationships you let crumble. You forgive because you finally have the perspective to understand why you were hurt in the first place. You become the perfected version of yourself. It is a long, strange adolescence, shedding the skin of the individual self to become something whole, something collective. But eventually, even paradise reaches a saturation point. The novelty of bliss wears thin, and the question that plagues every sentient thing in existence begins to surface. What is next? It is time to be born into something larger. It is a transformation that requires shedding the illusion of being alone. It is a slow, ego-shattering process, but you handle it with grace. You become part of a larger consciousness, a beautiful, sprawling entity that remembers its mortal home as a distant, precious dream. And yet, amidst that vastness, I keep my promise. I keep the small, human part of my husband close. I keep the part of him that remembers how to laugh, how to love, and how to hold my hand in the dark. We are not just gods. We are travelers now. We have left the old kingdoms behind, moving out into the yawning, silent void that stretches between realities. It is often empty, yes, but boredom is a luxury for those who have run out of time. For us, boredom is just a choice. We are looking for new dimensions, new beginnings, and perhaps other lost things that need a home. My husband and I, we have our little cottage on the edge of the infinite. We watch the past fade into a mist of static, a memory of a world that once was. He still worries about gelato and craftsmanship, about whether the work we did was enough. He still forgets that he is no longer bound by the limits of a human heart. He does not quite understand that forever is not a destination. It is a texture. It is the way he rests his hand on my knee, the way the light catches the silver in his hair, the way we laugh at the sheer, beautiful absurdity of existing. We do not know what the rest of this journey looks like. We do not have a roadmap for eternity, and we do not need one. We have the silence, we have each other, and we have the audacity to keep walking forward into the dark hand in hand. Whatever comes next, whatever strange horizons lie beyond this porch, we will face it together. Because even in an infinite universe, some things are simply perfect just as they are, and some stories, despite what you were taught, never truly have to end.